title?
So, can you elaborate?
Over time. I never know if time yet.
Mix shvachim b'fanav.
Yeah.
You agree? You agree?
What?
You agree with all the compliments they give you? You don't disagree. You don't disagree. Okay. Yeah.
Sit next to someone else. It's a scary problem.
I'm saying to a Chashiv Pnimius. You're a bacher or you're not a man? Drink a lot of Chassidus.
Is it Chalen?
Huh?
Our Lusker has a plan. It's a plan.
Are you mixing it together? Plain is better.
We're having a bad band.
Who mixing it?
Why not? Having an edible. I think he's going to go to sleep anyway.
So let's start. And let's talk more of the interval. I understand, shorter interval.
Attention span today with the...
Sometimes I get carried away. Sometimes you get carried away, you know how it goes.
Attention span today was...
So what's the attention? It's 8 seconds, I think.
Sorry about that.
It's 8 seconds.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So you and I, Hei Teves. Who else's birthday is Hei Teves?
Alright, that's good.
You and I, who else is Hei Teves?
Huh? You remember? No. I'm trying to think who else you would know.
That's one that was like leaving on her name.
He's not.
Hey, Davis.
Bob.
Carried on to the next day.
So, let's start with a nigun. Sing a nigun or sing another nigun. You can sing the Dan Masach, you can sing the Hatzik. Depends. Pnimius'dike, it's the Tzachendike.
Nu Jankel or Balmanagan.
Who's the ankle? His birthday today, it's Hei Teves.
Oh, na na ya.
Where are they going? They're leaving already. L'chaim. With Yontov.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. People always want to know and like to put into words, what did Chassidus contribute and how did it change the landscape? How did it change people? How did it change how the world would look like if there was no Chassidus? Chas v'shalom. I don't know if you ever had to face that challenge to explain it, because very often people growing up in their own culture just take for granted everything. You know, this is what I grew up with. It's the best. Everybody else is inferior. And not always able to explain in the Asis, Pshutis, in simple words. Like, so what did Chassidus contribute? Now, so you say Ahavas Yisroel, it says in the Torah, V'ahavta kamecha. You say Simcha, it says Yivdash Hashem b'Simcha. Achdus Hashem, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. These are all principles that go back thousands of years. So what did Chassidus really contribute? And as I said, the arrogant attitude that I know for sure the truth and everybody else doesn't is lav dafka the right approach. You have to be able to explain. So, Ashgacha Pratis, Bal Yenoledes to my left, younger than I am, who's addicted to his texting on his phone, as you can tell.
Left their phone.
Oh. We sang the nigun now. It's called Asher Nikoleiver's nigun. Asher Nikoleiver was a big chassid, and he was a Chassidish Yid, and he was mechaber this nigun. But here's an interesting twist that probably many of you don't know. The Rebbe mentions it in the Farbrengen too, so maybe you did hear it. He didn't create this song from scratch. Actually, this nigun he heard at a wedding. At a wedding of a bunch of Polish, Russisch poyers.
In Kiev.
It was in Kiev. It was a prosto, simple wedding, and the klezmer played this song called Volach. It was called, very simple song, and he took the song and turned it into this Asher Nikoleiver's nigun. My shver, Al Vashalom, was a Baal Menagin. He was part of Necheach. From the early years when the Rebbe first founded it in Tovshin Tazvav, approximately. If you've seen his Sefer, Zehusei Shel Chassid, Portrait of a Chassid, he writes in his diary detail how the Rebbe was very behind it, wanted that every Farbrengen, the Rebbe wanted a list of which songs would be sung. And every Farbrengen should have different songs to read Mechadesh HaYeshenis, that to bring back the nigunim, the reiche nigunim, the rich nigunim that Chabad had, and that's what the Rebbe wanted. So they would submit a list, like you'd base Talmud Tazvov, and the Rebbe sometimes changed, and that would be the nigunim they knew beforehand.
The Rebbe was involved, mamish, in every nigun.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he wanted different nigunim. He wanted it to be like a seder nigunim, like you're learning new nigunim, or new. Anyway, the Bochum refused to cooperate. My shver told them, the Rebbe wants it this way. No. The Balabatim don't tell us what to do. You know, that shtick. And Bepel became a Zabahala, the Kitzur. They'd start a nigun, and some people didn't know it, so they'd start a different nigun. And after a while, the Rebbe saw that there's no one to talk to, so it didn't happen. So went back to a few Vezdach Nigunim. You ever hear how they sing Hoi Lekeinu Shabbos by day in 770?
Yeah.
Like completely, if anyone that knows the nigun, how the Rebbe sang it was never like that. So it became a thing. You sing it at like fast speed. The Rebbe sang it very slowly and very gelassen. It's a beautiful Pnimius'dike nigun. Now it's like everything today. It's fast forward, and we don't have no patience. Like some people tell me, they hear my videos, they put it on 4 times the speed. you know. So I said, you can hear it, but you know, it's like that way they get through it for 4 times this time, you know, instead of listening for an hour, 20 minutes.
Not me.
You can do it that way.
I put it on slower.
You can. Because you're an older man, you travel slow. They give you a ticket for driving too slow, right?
I'm to my mother-in-law.
Okay. You know, some people.
My mother.
Yeah. Anyway, Bekit says, so my Shver told me once, he knew the nigun as it was the volach. So I'll sing it for you. You can see here, mamish, b'muchesh, you can actually see how Chassidus took a poshet nigun and turned it into a tifa gagoyim nigun, a deep song of yearning. So my Shver taught this, I remember, it was in the house, so the nigun, the way Asher Nikoleiver heard it at the wedding, was a nigun like, you know, like a jingle. It went like this. Ay ya ya ya, did it ay ya 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 ya. Ay ya ya ya, did it ay ya 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 ya. Ay ya 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 did I. Ay ya did I ya 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 ya. You know, I mean, the people dance to this. It's like one of these dances. And look what Asher Nikoleiver did. He took this nigun. So here they do. Ay ya ya ya, did it ay ya 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 by Asher Nikoleiver. Ay ya 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 na ya no ya 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 na ya na ya na ro. Look, can you do that? Take a little ay ya ya ya, did it ay ya na ya na ya no ya na.
Today they're doing everything now. Making it faster.
Exactly.
So you can dance to the faster one.
So it sounds easy now you hear it, but then can you do it? Can you take a Yeah. So what he did was, and that's what Chassidus do guitar. The Frierdiker Rebbe says, writes, that he once visited Vienna. In Europe, in Austria. And the Frierdiker Rebbe would sometimes have delegations, Rabbonim. He had Vienna and Germany are very close. They speak German there. And Frierdiker Rebbe had a delegation of German rabbis that came to see him. I remember Germany, even though it was the birth of the Reform movement that birthed a lot of problems, but it also had a very strong community, especially in Frankfurt the Main. There was a very strong Orthodox Fruma presence for close to 1,000 years there. And a delegation of rabbis came to see the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe. He was staying in a hotel, fancy hotel, and there are different people doing research trying to find out all the hotels that Rabbeim stayed in Europe, in Germany, in France, in south of France. And so they were sitting in the lobby and talking on a sofa, on a couch. And they said to the Frierdiker Rebbe, one of their questions was, Chassidus never reached us here in Vienna, in Germany. What did Chassidus contribute to Yiddishkeit? We're a very strong Jewish community, the Shamayim and all that. What did Chassidus contribute? So Frierdiker Rebbe answered, he asked the Rabbonim to look around. The big lobby, the German hotels were very fancy. Design, architecture. And there was these big marble pillars. So these rabbis said, they were speaking in Yiddish. They see these big pillars, powerful, large pillars, very strong. And so Frierdiker Rebbe stood up from the sofa, and they followed him. He went over to one of the pillars, closer, and there was a lamp there. He took the lamp and put it close to the pillar. He says, what do you see now? Now we see the exquisite flowers and designs and images engraved in the marble pillar. Now, why didn't you say that before? He says, because before we looked from a distance. It's called going through the door.
Mendel, check if the door's open.
Someone says, I can't get into my house. So I said, you try turning the handle? Oh, you're right, that's a good point. We'll talk about that later. There's a whole night here. So she said, why didn't you see that before? Didn't describe all these flowers and details? They said, because we looked from a distance. From a distance, you just see a pillar. You get close. So Frierdiker Rebbe answered, and said that's exactly what Chassidus came to do. It didn't come to add anything new. Chaz v'sholom. There's no new Torah. Kol masha Talmud vasik asel lechadish nitn l'meisha mesinai. The Rebbe Rashab writes in Kuntas Etzachayim, humorously, B'loshon Hatzachas, he says, that there's some people who say such chidush Torah that there's such chidushim they weren't even nitn l'meisha mesinai. That's not a kunz. The kunz is to say a chidush that was nitn, but no one saw it till now. That's the kunz. So Frierdiker Rebbe told them, Chassidus contributed, not new. It shined the light on the flowers and the beauty and the exquisite beauty of Yiddishkeit that can be sometimes forgotten or overlooked when you're looking from a distance. It's a beautiful way of explaining Chassidus. So when the Baal Shem Tov taught about Ahavas Yisroel, long before the Baal Shem Tov, and every misnagid, every Dvik was going to say to you what the Chiddush, it's a Pasuk in Torah, it's Chazal, it's a mitzvah sesa daraisa. The Chiddush is not that it says in the book, that you live by it. And a method, how taka do you have Ahavas Yisroel when you don't like a certain person? Even till this day we know it's not such an easy thing, Ahavas Yisroel. So what did he do? He shined the light on this mitzvah and said, how do you have Ahavas Yisroel? When you mizbeinen, that it is an neshama, and al tabet al mareyu, you don't look at his externals, and he has an etzem neshama, and that neshama comes from the Eibishter. That neshama is beautiful. So when you look from a distance, you can see a Jew and say, "Hey, he's not my type." You become judgmental and condescending, and all that happens when it comes to Chmonot Slan Sinas Chinam. But when you mizbein and say that the Eibishter put this person on the world, there must be something. Famous Gemara, where the guy was walking the street, Rabbi, who was it? Looked at him and said, Kama mechuar, look how ugly you look. I mean, it's a low appella how I can speak that way, especially Tana. Was it Amir? And what did he answer? This person, he said, you're so unbecoming, so ugly. He said, Lech le'uman shasani. Go to the craftsman who shaped me, who built me. Meaning, go to the Eibishter that made me this way. So there's a whole question: why would the Gemara even document such a havamina? But the reason is because the Gemara wasn't just a simple. He was saying kama mechur was not just his looks, his behavior, his whole personality was very disgusting, repulsive. And the lesson he told him is, go to the uman. There's an uman in each one of us. It could be we wandered away from the way God shaped and crafted us and designed us. But there's still inside every human being, there's a afal pishachat Yisroel, there's a nitzut, there's a nefesh, ruach, neshama, chay yechid. So the power of Chassidus is shining the light and teaching us how to look at these flowers that were always in marble, in the pillars. However, from a distance, you don't really see them. And Chassidus shined the light on them. So Asher Nikoleiver took a song, seems like a prosta, simple song that most of us wouldn't see any depth in it, and he found in its Pnimius, he took it and turned to and I know it's hard to articulate what's that tenua feel like. You know, we all have a hergish, you sing a nigun of Gagoyim. But you can put it in words. It's a nigun that describes our yearning for something greater than ourselves. It could be a memory. In Lashon of Chassidim today, it might be a type of yearning to see the Rebbe. A yearning for a better world. A world that is not so jaded and hostile and so on. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can articulate. Everybody has their yearnings. And that's what Chassidus did. It took regular things and showed nothing is regular. Ordinary things are extraordinary. Everything is deeper than it meets the eye. And that's why, especially by Chabad Chassidim, Pnimius was such an ikar. Because Chitzenius means you're still looking at the externals. The Frierdiker Rebbe writes in Purim that when you call someone a chitzen, it was the biggest insult. Now, for many of us, that doesn't sound like such an insult. There's the worst words you can use on somebody, right? I'm sure you can come up with some good descriptions of people that's worse than a chitzen. Why is chitzen such a horrible thing? Chitzen means that you live a superficial, everything is on a surface level, there's nothing more profound and deeper. That's why by the Rebbe it was such a ikavon akadgosha and Pnimius. This doesn't mean chitzenis doesn't matter. Obviously, in Maisu Iker, you have to bring it out in externals. But if it's only external, and it's a tremendous lesson on every possible level, because we live in a world today that everything is externals. Everything is what it looks like. The cynics at Madison Avenue, that in advertising and marketing will tell you, it doesn't matter what happened. It matters what people think happened. What it's going to look like on the websites. This website, that website. I'm not going to say names here. I don't want to get into any
controversy.
Right. Or like the mother that was wheeling a carriage, newborn baby, and someone comes over and looks, oh, what a beautiful baby. And she says, that's nothing, you should see the picture. Like pictures became more than reality. Now the Rebbe was very makpid in the early years, not to people shouldn't take pictures of him. There was a time he made a gzeira that our pictures at the wedding, the one who took the pictures, what was his name? Who took those pictures? Trainer. Could only take 3 pictures of a chuppah. When my father got married, he could only take 3 pictures. That was the limit. The day before, Zeli Katzman got married, and he decided, the Rebbe said 3, I'm not going to do any pictures. So he's like the only chassan that Rebbe Masad Kedushin, there's no picture of him.
And Shalom Morozov.
Okay, yeah, Shalom Morozov, yeah.
And mine.
And you too?
Yeah, but the photographer.
The Rebbe was also not there, but that was.
And he lost all the footage.
I'm glad you're inserting yourself into this narrative. We're not really talking about you. I was talking about the Rebbe. But okay. And you see some pictures, even the Rebbe blacks his face. So you could say, why did the Rebbe change later? Because maybe he saw it's a battle he can't win, or there's an Indian. Maybe even Chassidus also has something. The Rebbe did say people should have a picture of the Frierdiker Rebbe to remind themselves when they have an Asoyan. So I'm not taking away, but the word is that Chassidus itself is Chassidus. Well, I'm not saying this time. I know what I'm saying could be at any Farbrengen, Hei Teves today. What do you think at the end of the day, Hei Teves? I'm not going to go over everything I said last year by the Farbrengen. We have recordings, so we don't have to repeat, right? But I will say this: at the end of the day, from a point of view of a chassid, what Hei Teves revealed was exactly that. To most people, it seems, what's the big thing? A guy's taken a few books from a library. He's after all a grandson. Okay, fine. Didn't get along with the Rebbe. So big maisa, so what? Why is it so significant? What's a book already? You could always buy another book. But when you look at Pnimius, like a chassid looks in Pnimius, and the Rebbe, of course, led the way because he saw the Pnimius. A Pnimius is not what you see in the external. A sefer is more than a sefer. A sefer is a life. Teres Chaim, and I know Nafshik Sovis Yehovis. The author of the Sefer is inscribed in it. It's not just another book. A Rebbe is not just a leader, a CEO. A Rebbe is Belang Tzachsidim. That's a concept that only through Pnimius you could understand. There's no such thing on earth. Everybody seems to be has a citizenship. You ever think of a leader, a president, a general, a king doesn't have a private life? And here the Goyish Judge Sifton recognized the words of the Rebbetzin that the Rebbe belongs to Chassidus. That's a very Pnimius'dike word. Needs a lot of explanation actually what that means. Does the Rebbe have anything private of his own? Everything he has belongs to Chassidus?
100%.
There you go. However, if you look in the Rebbe, he actually, in Savoy, he writes that some of his stuff, some of his belongings should go to his niece.
Which never happened.
So what are you contradicting what the Rebbe wrote? This this generation. They don't realize they could say something that's mamish like what the Rebbe says, and they think it's iskashrus, The Rebbe writes that.
Given over. Sing the pill and everything.
Fine, my half community in I know. No, it's not stam. It means like what the Rebbe wrote. In other words, it's not dafka exactly, right? That's what you're trying to say.
It's like a fact.
Okay, it's shikayach for the fact, but the bottom line, the Rebbe wrote it. So how does it stem what the Rebbe said as a Rebbe belongs to Chassidus? So this,
wrote that certain forms should go to different nations of the Rebbe.
And the Rebbe's Taka brought that and said, as ich bin gegangen, and I asked the Schwer, And the Papel, he didn't give me the sefer. That was Taka showing that in the Chanami.
It wasn't his to give, but he directed you to give.
Yeah. So it's a discussion how to understand that. But the point is, but even saying that Rebbe belongs to Chassidim, especially we're talking about the Sfarim of the Rebbe, which is the Torah of the Rebbe, is a Pnimius'dike word. And I think I spoke about it last year. Maybe I didn't. I think so. I did. And I always thought why the Rebbe was so upset. And what was it, Beis Kislev, when he was yelling at the Bachim? You know, the Bachim drehen sich in the Gassen schon 40 Jahre, mit allem, you know, right? So, but I think the upset was more, it wasn't Stam, is because the whole the Dan Notzach of Sfarim, like the Rebbe said, the Even HaBeichen, the litmus test that a Sefer is living, is when you're learning it. So to take a day, it's a chuchat lula, the Rebbe said, to take a day, that you're supposed to be showing the Sfarim are living, instead drehen sich and sailing the Fliegen, the flies, and drehen sich is like mamash astirim minei bay. So wasting time is always a problem. But especially on a day like that, when the whole thing is meant to be, you're celebrating that these books are alive.
Hei Teves itself.
Huh?
Hei Teves itself. 7 days of dancing.
So first of all, as you know, the Rebbe didn't begin that way. He was much more humble. But the Rebbe leading the way, even if you don't have an answer, the Rebbe knows what he's doing. It's a simcha shel kedusha. You dance simcha Torah too. But here, the Rebbe said, "Drein sich in the gassen" is very different. I don't know if you heard the story ever. You know, there's the porch you see in the second floor of 770. So where they build a sukkah, the big sukkah, so there's a porch there. Frierdiker Rebbe's apartment that's the porch. Frierdiker Rebbe would go out on the porch from time to time, but it was covered in vines, so no one can see the Frierdiker Rebbe, but he was there. There's actually a picture, you see the Frierdiker Rebbe on the porch from inside. You see the vines. The Frierdiker Rebbe once said, "Men meint geh kappen frische Luft." Nein, geh mezachig sein dem Avir. People said it. Thought that Frierdiker Rebbe is going to get some fresh air. No, he's coming to refine the Avir, the environment, the air. So once, you have to remember, after Tafshin Ches, Tafshin Zayin already, people didn't really see the Frierdiker Rebbe. Didn't come out in public anymore. Even davening, he davened privately. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, they'd open the door. Sudas were private. And you can imagine, Chassidim were mistaken to see, they wanted to see the Rebbe. But there was no Gelegenheit, there wasn't an opportunity. One day, for some reason, a vine opened up in the porch. For some reason, the vines were like someone like separated the vines. So from a certain angle, if you stood, I know where the angle is because the one who told me the story showed me because he was there. So if you stand by the library of the Rebbe by the door, like a little, actually right in front of this building here, mamash here, a little further. So that angle you could see the Frierdiker Rebbe. So the word got out. Ken Zendem Rebbe, you know, unbelievable. Huh? So 770, and suddenly in this little section here, right outside here, the Sud de Kumtan. So who's the caterer? Huh? Where's it coming from? Okay, they took it. Anyway, listen to this. She could see the Frierdiker Rebbe. At kedei kach, the word got out that Bedford and Dean could come to life. You know, I mean, I don't know how many Bachim was, 50, 70, 80. Doesn't matter. You can imagine if once in a lifetime opportunity. So they had a bunch of Bachim standing and looking at the Rebbe. Frierdiker Rebbe noticed them. So he made with his hand like this. And the Bachim started filing by. They walked by the sukkah, like by the chutzner, where the chutzner is now. From Eastern Parkway to Union. So then there was a way through. Today, I don't know what's going on there. What is going on there? On the other side.
Doing over the table.
A churva. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, Al Kaponim, the Bachim went through. Now, one Bacher was a Chachim, and he decided he wants to see again. So he came around Union, Kingston, came back, and walked through again. Okay. Doesn't seem like much, right? Well, the Bachim then went all back. I think they closed the vine, or the Frierdiker Rebbe went back in, whatever it was.
What's that?
20 minutes later, there's a phone call to the Anhola in Bedford and Dean. And a message from the Frierdiker Rebbe, from the Rebbe. And there's a gefinnen the Bacher that went the second time.
Wow.
And tell him that the Rebbe gesagt, as a Bacher darf sich nicht drehen in the Gassen. A Bacher doesn't have to hang around the streets. It's interesting. The first time, you see the Rebbe, the second time you're already hanging out in the streets.
Who's the Bacher, by the way?
I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned who's the one that told you.
One knows Hei Teves?
What kind of soup is it?
Right. Ah, so you know the jokes, okay. Shlamil, Shlamazel, Nudnik, right? Good.
You meant who's the Bacher that told you the mice.
You telling me what he meant?
Alright.
Okay, Akaponim, it's not negay, the Maisi is, so the Rebbe, the Etzem Uchusa Vayomtiv is, it's like a person would go Chanukah, which is a celebration of light, and go shut out all the lights. But Mamish Hepech of the Etzem, of the whole mitzvah. And by the Rebbe, I remember the anguish when he spoke Tezvav Tammuz Tov Shemem Hei. And he said the tiny is the sharp basis. I don't even want to repeat. I was weiter von Tafshin Yud. It was mach weiter. There was noch mehr nicht da, and so on. And the exact opposite. The whole things to demonstrate as the Rebbe seine Sforim, seine Pulis, seine noch mehr lebendiger, noch starker, noch mehr aktiv. Because that was the word. It's not active. Chabad's not active. Noch mehr aktiv. Rebbe said, bei uns, zwischen uns, durch uns, alle Iden, die ganze Welt. And that was like a central component, which I don't see so much emphasized. Maybe because it's the hard part of Hei Teves. It's easy to dance, but it's harder to learn. And even harder to live with the learning. To mamish live with it, because that was the Rebbe wanted. And even before Gimel Tammuz, before Chav Zayin Oder, you could think now that way. Even before Chav Zayin Oder, I remember it was Lamed Tov Lamed Zayin or Ches, Lamed Zayin, I think. I remember there was a Bocher, American boy, who came from, I think from Toronto originally. I'm not sure where he came from. And for some reason, he was able to obtain a Bichel, a book of Chassidus, Xavier manuscript. So when he showed it to some Chabadniks, they said, you have to bring this to the Rebbe. Interestingly, he brought it to the Rebbe. Ahavas Yisroel walked into the room. I'm not going to say his name.
Alti, come even up.
They know the cover they have to give you.
Birthday present when you sit it.
Nach a Pelish is? Your landslide?
Yeah.
Okay. Einiglich from Pelish, nicht betrifft. Kinder. Okay. So, where was I? Right, so he brought this bichel, and for some reason, I don't know, maybe they didn't understand what's going on. The other people told him to go to the Rebbe. So after Mincha, he was told to stand in Gan Eden Atachten. The Rebbe would come back from Mincha. Before he goes in the room, he'll give it to the Rebbe. He gives the Rebbe. I wasn't there, but I heard like 2 minutes afterwards. And the Rebbe makes Ksav from Shver. It's like Ksav Yad from Shver. Rebbe, it was my morning from Tofresh Pei Aleph. Ksav Yad from the Shver. You can imagine how much the Rebbe had simcha from every manuscript, every sefer. Especially Ksav Yad from the Frierdiker Rebbe. Ksav Yad from Shver, the Rebbe said. And they later printed it. My sefer my morning Tofresh Pei Aleph. Anyway, the Rebbe then, I think, spoke to him there, or I don't think he went into the Rebbe's room. Not sure. So the Rebbe says, since you brought something to me that's something that's so precious to me, I'd like to give you something that's precious for you. What can I give you as a gift? So that he said to the Rebbe, I'd like a picture of the Rebbe that's autographed. You know, he was an American boy, or Canadian, and So, what do you do when you have a celebrity? You hang them up on the wall. You have a signature, like a baseball player, or whatever. So the Rebbe smiled and said to him, "What do you want a picture with my signature?" He says, "That way I have a connection with you. I'll have a souvenir." And the Rebbe said to him, "If you want a connection with me, you should learn what I learn and do what I do. You go across the street, you can take any svarim there, and that be my gift to you." And this is here, the Rebbe's begashmi is there, shama beguf, be'enei basar, and so on. So even then, the connection is not a connection gashmi. Now obviously, shama beguf, and something that even our enei basar can relate to. Yeah. That we can relate to. We're not using any corporate names tonight. See?
Maybe the library.
It's amazing.
Right. That was a joke. You have to have a sense of humor.
It takes a folder for a long time to register.
Don't be so self-defeating. You're all right. You're a good guy. So, what do you see from this? The Pnimius. So there's no question that Rebbe understood that we live in a world where you need to have also chetzenis. A picture matters, what it looks like. I mean, even al piteder. There's a mitzvah that a mezuzah should be nice. Mezuzah is no, a sefer Torah no. You build a shul, you build anything, should be nice, begashmis. But Chassidus explains there's yefi gashmi and yefi ruchni. The external beauty is reflecting the inner beauty. Like in English, for example, you say the word face. The face of something is just the surface. In Hebrew, the word for face, ponim, also means pnim, pnimius. In English, the face of something actually means you could show your face one way and inside is something else altogether. But in Hebrew, it's teche kebare. What you see is what you get. An honest person. By children, there's no echad b'peh, echad b'lev. There's no duplicity, no hypocrisy. That you smile to someone and then you stab them in the back. Any of you know how to do that? It's an art that you develop as you mature. I see nobody raise their hand, so it means you don't do that. Good, that's good to hear.
Maybe you should teach us.
You stay here all night and you'll find out. You see me smiling now? You never know. Frierdiker Rebbe, by the way, in a maamar Chayesara Tofresh Pei Daled, it's the only time you find this in Chassidus. It's a very interesting thing. He talks there about different chunas, different midas of people, personalities. And he says there, hyena in Hebrew is a blurdis, something like bardilus. Right, in modern Hebrew it's a leopard. No, the bardilus I think they use today for leopard, also, or cheetah. Al Capone use a bardilus. I think he says bardilus. I'm almost sure, but he says its chuna is this. You ever hear a laughing hyena? Hyenas laugh. It sounds like a giggle. So he says there they giggle, they make you laugh, and when you're vulnerable and you're laughing, that's when they kill you. And he gives that for dugma of this, they smile to you and then stab you in the back. So in the secular world, in English language, you could have a ponim is a face, surface. In Hebrew, ponim and pnim is the same thing. Pnimius and because the chetzenius reflects the pnimius. So if it's beautiful on the inside, it should be beautiful on the outside. That's why yefas teir, yefas mare, and the teir is a shvach. It's not chetzenius. Then it says in the pasuk sheker achem vehevel hayefi. The Chumash says yefas teir, yefas mare is a quality. Why does it only say sheker achem sheker hevel hayefi? So Chassidus answers. The Rebbe actually answered by dollars. Some of you may have seen it. I don't know if appropriate to say it here by Bochrim, but the Rebbe said it Barabim. So it was the former beauty queen from Israel. She went by the Rebbe, now she's from woman, and she's asked for a bracha from Ahavas Yisroel. And then she walked by, like usual, the Rebbe would call people back and said to her in Hebrew, that what it says, Sheker Achem Vehevel Hayefi, doesn't mean on its own. Once you have Kim Isha Yiras Hashem Hitisallel, then the yefi and the chein is infused and durgenommen with even the chitzenius. So it's not dismissing beauty, it's just making sure that beauty shouldn't just be external, it has to come from within. So the idea of Chassidus is the Pnimius. Like I started before with Asher Nikoleiver's nigun, and Hei Teves as well. So for a chassid, whenever you look at something, what's expected of a chassid is to look beneath the surface. There's enough people seeing the surface. We don't need us to look at the surface of things. And nothing is ever what it appears. Would you like to be judged by what your face looks like when you're in a bad mood or a good mood? We all know there's more to a person than what appears to the eye. And I think Chassidus Yidden, we have to keep that in mind, because there's so much chitzenius going around and judgment, that when you look with Pnimius, that's also the key to Ahavas Yisroel. Because when you look externals, then you say, you don't belong in my club, you don't fit into me, I have my group, blah blah, this is what we stand for. When you look a little Pnimius'dike, you start realizing that we're more similar than we're different, and that we each actually need each other and complement each other. And we know what the Rebbe said, that if there was Ahavas Yisroel, the boy, and no machlekes, Mashiach will schon lang gekommen. I can't get over the fact that every one of us knows that, and still there's a possibility for there to be machlekes. Everyone wants Mashiach, everyone yells Mashiach, Mashiach day and night, and the Rebbe said what the key is, and this simple thing we cannot accomplish. So I understand it's the biggest nisoyan, and the stakes are high, and I'm not referring to anybody specific here, because I don't see any Bala Machlekas in this room particularly. Maybe I didn't look good enough, but we'll see soon. But I'm saying it also in general, because it's just, since I've got the floor here, I'm getting off my chest. You hear Alter? So the Rebbe says such a thing. He says, well, Langikum Mashiach. So how is it possible that we can still not transcend our little petty shtusim to create a little Agdus? Obviously, I'm not here to say Musa, I'm speaking to myself just as I speak to you. But we're here, Hei Teves, and I don't like to waste time. Might as well talk about things that matter. We could spend hours talking about things that are abstract, or we could talk about things down the pale mamish, like what Hei Teves really means to me and you. I hear some Farbrengens, without names, mamish can read in shas lying and nothing is said. Everybody's got their agenda, their own things. I don't even want to repeat it. To me, it's one simple question that the Rebbe would always ask in every Farbrengen. Teira Meloshna Heira, L'maynaf Kamina, to you and I. And the Rebbe would use sharp words. And when you see sometimes choser in Hanocha, and people always ask me, what's the choser? What did the Rebbe say? Because people don't want to read what it says, they want to know what's choser. The choser gets more attention than the words. So very often, I can tell you what the chosses are. Not always, it's different reasons. Very often the chosses, because the Rebbe says something sharp about himself, that if mefot mehetnish was zog doesn't come but pale, it's dvarim betelim. Uden in the leishamin means ears that don't hear, is a siman that you're lacking Yerushalayim. So we didn't feel it was appropriate to put that in Hanocha, the Rebbe speaking that way about himself. But he did say it. And the Rebbe was atayid, because the Torah says it. So you could say, one second, the Rebbe is Chazru Shalom, it's his fault that we're not listening to him. Why is he blaming? But that's what the Torah says. That if he says something and we don't do it, it's reflective on him. Of course, we'd love to say it's our fault. Don't worry, we're just a bunch of idiots. But that's not what the Torah says. It's not what the Torah says. And the Rebbe would say many times that if you don't get through to someone, it's always your problem, not theirs. Because you could always blame them. They're grub young, they're callous, they're stupid, whatever it is, tinik shenishba. The Rebbe would always look. There's also an interesting lesson in life. They're always looking at what did you say? Did you say it right? Maybe what did you say not correct? So those things we usually took on. That was usually a choser k'tas, all the different madrigas and choser harbe. I don't think there's anyone like that. But so the point is that that anything like a Hei Teves, the question has to be asked. The Evan Abechen is the mind of Kamina B'Peil, you and I. So one of the things is definitely looking at things in a deeper way, a Rebbe, what a Rebbe is, and what Svarim are, and of course the kesher the Rebbe has with us, and what that kesher means today, and how that plays itself out in our lives. And yes, and the way we communicate with each other is very easy. I remember I was once sitting with somebody, I don't know names, and he was like trying to convince me of his shita, of how he understands the Rebbe's approach to Mashiach. And I didn't happen to agree with him. That doesn't mean he has no that he didn't have a valid argument. I'm not one of those people that say you have to be wrong for me to be right. I could be right, maybe you have a different approach. Fine, we can coexist even if we don't agree about everything. But some people feel, unless you don't agree with me, no, they have to make sure. I see that as insecurity. Psychological terms means why do I have to be wrong for you to be right? Because you're not so sure of yourself. If you're so sure, you don't have to convince me. Be sure and sleep peacefully. So when you talk about these matters, to be able to talk openly, you have to have that confidence and be able to say, okay, and yes, and able to say if you don't get through to somebody, what's going on in your end? That was the Rebbe's approach, even with himself. Ad kadei kach. So l'chaim to your Chassidus Shiden here, Hei Teves of the Welt, and we'll continue talking about this. Some real Heiros Bepel, at least Pnimius'dike, and above all, and not in a Mouthpiece way and in a prosta way. Yes, the Rebbe lives, but the Rebbe lives the way Chassidus says he lives. Like it says in Ahavas Yisroel, that a Rebbe, even when he's in a Neshama Beguf, it's Chaim Ruchanim, not Chaim Gashmi. Even then, you don't have to wait after Gimel Tammuz. And that's why the Rebbe told him it's not a picture and an autograph. You want me, learn what I learn. That's how you have me. And that's even when we were dancing with the Rebbe Simchas Teira, Begashmis, L'mata Masoret Tvachim. Now it's not such an easy thing because, as I said, Chitzenius is always easier. But Chassidus Chabad never satisfied with Chitzenius. It was always the Pnimius. Always. Now today, it's only Pnimius. And if you don't have the Pnimius, you really have nothing, to be honest. People who try to replace Pnimius with Chitzenius, it's not true. It just doesn't work. Besides the fact that it's not Chassidus. And yes, you want to understand what a Rebbe is, you have to learn Chassidus. You can't understand a Rebbe if you don't understand the Elokus. And I'll just say before we sing a nigun, I'll say the word that Rabbi said to Chassidim, who was the Tzemach Tzedek, after the Istalkus of the Rebbetzin, Pnimius'dike, Tzemach Tzedek. It was also 5, he was a Tofrei Shchaf Aleph. And by all the other Rabbeim, the Rebbetzin survived the Rabbeim. But the Rebbetzin Pnimius'dike, the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek, was Tofrei Shchaf Aleph. Istalkus of the Tzemach Tzedek would be Chavav, Tofrei Shchaf. So everyone knows that Tzemach Tzedek went into a type of seclusion, if you wish. There was no maamorim, there was no yechidus, there was no answers. We don't know exactly how long it lasted, but it was enough time that the Chassidim were very shaken by it. And the Rebbe has in a letter, Tzemach Tzedek said, "Ein melech b'lei matranisa," very sharp words, similar words that the Rebbe used after Memches. That a king is not a king without a queen. Chassidim tried to answer, the queen is Torah. So Tzedek was not consoled by that. But then came up Surah Teva one day. Tzedek is going to say a maamar Chassidus. And so you can imagine the simcha. Chassidim came into Lubavitch. Tzedek is going to say a maamar after months, or whatever amount of time it was. Rabbi Paritcher was already older chassid then. Remember, he first came with the Alter Rebbe. Same story. Sechta Erchin, but so he was by the Mittler Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek. But he came by him on maamar Chassidus. They say Rabbi Hillel on maamar was like there's nothing greater. So he was not well, but he came to Lubavitch, and they were waiting. They were waiting near the Zal where the Tzemach Tzedek would say the maamar. An hour, 2 hours. Tzemach Tzedek is not coming out. Rabbi Hillel was not feeling well, so he had to go out. He's walking out, and what happens? He hears two young light talking, and he didn't like what they said. They talked a little grub, a little not edel about the Rebbe. They said, "Was kementan?" The Rebbe is. They used probably some words that shouldn't be used. So Rabbi Hillel got so disturbed by it, suddenly got a new surge of chayes. He went over to them, and he said these words. Schwenzelach, Schwenzelach, Schwenzelach. You know how to translate that?
No.
Okay, you could translate it edely, you could translate it more grub. I'll leave it to your imagination. Schwenzelach, Schwenzelach, 3 times he said. Was meint as a Rebbe is eigen a nose mit hamoil? What do you think? A Rebbe's eyes, nose, and mouth? A Rebbe is Elokus. When b'shas da helam of Elokus, da helam of a Rebbe. A Rebbe is godliness. And when there's a concealment on godliness, there's a concealment on the Rebbe. Think about those words. What are you talking about here? You think the Rebbe is one of your, like you? And that's exactly right, when you think about it. If whatever, there's a helam, yes, Geulah is a helam and Elokus too, Shchinta begalusa. So of course there's going to be a helam on the Rebbe. Not l'griusa, because the Rebbe is bedug milamayla, and when there's a concealment, there's a concealment. It's just a whole different way of looking at a Rebbe. People use all kinds of words, and the being megashim things is not just wrong; it's insulting. It's defeating the whole purpose of what a Rebbe is. A Rebbe is Elokus, not Elokat, just for the record. Elokus. The Chassidus is Elokus, not Elokus means it's godliness, and he's a merkovet, the godliness. And when something happens that affects Elokus, it's going to affect the Rebbe. And sometimes it's a Geulah, and sometimes it's a hell. That's what he told them. So I think we have to look at things in that way. Hei Teves tells us, and this came Magdim Refuah Lamaka, Toshim Zayin, 33 years ago, before Zayin Oder, that ratified in a secular Goyish federal court forever and ever, which means it's mamish and tachtenim shein tacht l'matim, not in a maamar Chassidus. That the Rebbe belongs to Chassidim, and therefore he lives on. He lives on in his words, which those words are learned by us. And in Yud Shvat Tavshin Chavav, the Rebbe said something very, very sharp. Many sikhs, the Rebbe speaks about ma zari b'chaim, afu b'chaim. But then the Rebbe explained it this way. He said, before Tavshin Yud, the Shver, the Frierdiker Rebbe, he controlled his destiny. Where he wanted to walk, he walked. Where he wanted to travel, he traveled. Where he wanted to sit and learn, he learned. He controlled. And after Tavshin Yud, we control his destiny. Because Zari B'chaim. So if you do what he wants you to do, Afu B'chaim. And Rahman al-Islam, if you don't, you're affecting him directly. So it's a big achrayis. That means we are the arms and legs. Not Chaz v'Shalom we replace, it's the Rebbe. But Kav Yochel, there's something we must do. So when we make, Chil Hashem? Why is Chil Hashem the biggest Aveda? Because you're representing God. People see you behave in a way that's Machal Shem Shemayim. For them, that you're representing that. When you're Mekadosh Shem Shemayim, there's no bigger or worse, the bigger mitzvah, no worse Aveda than that. So Kav Yochel, the same thing. The Rebbe said it many times. Whether you like it or not, they look at you as a Labavitch Chassid, and if you behave like an idiot, they say, what kind of Rebbe educated such a student? What do you think? Students reflect on their teacher. I remember it was in Mem Gimel, Mem Daled. Alton, thanks. Well, remember, thought you could read my mind. The Rebbe said that, unbelievable. He said he got a letter from someone who's asking the Rebbe, what should he answer? Someone has tinus about why the Rebbe speaks about Mashiach so much. And the Rebbe didn't even answer. The Rebbe was so upset that someone, he says, and he wants me to answer. What kind of chassid is this that someone's asking him a question and he doesn't have an answer? What kind of Rebbe does he have that produces such a chassid that can't answer? And that was what bothered the Rebbe. I remember it stuck with me because it meant that all of us, whether you like it or not, that's what you represent. You're not representing yourself. Which is why sometimes you find people behave in a certain way with kavanosim ritzuya, have all the best intentions, all's fine and good. But if someone interprets what you did in a way that's incorrect, it makes no difference what your intentions are. You're embarrassing the Rebbe, and that's that. And why people are selfish and think that Chassidus says, I'm the one that knows. No, ask people what their reaction is. I do it all the time. I travel. Sometimes I may say something, and if I say it in a way that people misunderstood, it's my mistake, not theirs. I can't go and say, you know what? They're stupid. They don't understand. That's not the Rebbe taught us that way. It's our achrayus to represent it right. And if you have a suffix, maybe you should be a little careful, because you're not representing yourself. You're not a private citizen, whether you like it or not. I said it yesterday in my words in the museum. That's what the Rebbe writes. We're coming 70 years to Yud Shvat. What does the Rebbe say in the Siv Gimel? That we're the Deir Ashvi, Nish Mitun Zebchira, Nish Mitun Zaveda, Unefsher in Kamin Yanim, Afil Nish Vimevil. Means it's not about what you chose.
We don't want it.
This is it. You're here now, Deir Ashvi. Why you were born in the Chabad community and not in some other community, you'll never know why, but that's the fact you are. So it makes no difference whether you want it or not. You have a tremendous achrayus. And now, Hei Teves, the Sfarim are totally completely, whether we live with them or we don't. You don't live with them, it's Evan HaBeichen that they're not alive. Let's put it very bluntly. And if you do live with them, they're alive and the Rebbe in them is alive. And there's no two ways about it. That's what a Rebbe is. If Chassidim are not alive with the Rebbe and everything the Rebbe represents, you're directly impacting the Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe says already in Tami, you could take the Reishi Shel Melech and put him in the worst places. So we've already heard these sharp words. I think we have to take this to heart in a very personal way. And I know that people like to be self-righteous. I know it all. I figured it all out. But that's not a derech Chassidim ever had, that they knew everything. Nothing wrong with being a little humble. We all make our mistakes. Good to have true brave yeyitz. You have a suffix, you talk to someone. Just to take the achrayus, it's years already. This should have been an attitude all the time. But since we're talking, I think it's one of the important lessons today. When you walk and you talk, wherever you go, it's not about you. It's how people see the Rebbe through you. And if you make a Kiddush Hashem, people say, wow, look at this person. He's refined, edel, a mensch. Then they say, that's a Rebbe. I would want to be around. Produce such Talmidim. And if Chaz B'Shalom the opposite, you can imagine what that means. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. Velvet Shekoyach.
I want to shake your hand.
No, a nigun.
The article excellent.
Not yet.
No, what about a nigun? A nigun? You know.
I had it 50. I don't know it was all one chutzah. All Asher Nikoleiver chutzah. 400 guys in this chutzah. Only 2 guys were chutzah. One of them was Jacobson. He from Eretz Yisrael. I learn with my Rav 3 times a week.
No, the beginning will be hard. Someone said, the beginning I didn't like Purim. I'll talk about it. Listen to my thing next time. You'll love it. It's very good. I must say so much. Taking pictures.
Chaim, you have a Chaim?
L'chaim. So we want to Shmulik. And once upon a time, everybody was anonymous. But nowadays we have to acknowledge the sponsors and the organizers and everything.
Corporate sponsors.
From the producers. So Sheker to Shmuli, who's the Baal Yemeledis of Hei Teves as well. People keep telling me, there are people who tell me, so when did you change your birthday to Hei Teves? Because it's too much Hashgacha Pratis. You work in books and you have Hei Teves. I know, it worked out actually. I was 30 years old when Mem Zayin happened. My mother was on the phone with me. It was around 11:30 in the morning. I was sitting upstairs in Hanochas Atmimim, the office on the second floor. Or our office is actually the closest one there, the Rebbe's office, and we see the Frierdiker Rebbe's apartment. And suddenly, while I'm on the phone, they're singing in the street. And my mother asked me, so how do they know that it's your birthday? I said, they don't know it's my birthday. I don't think it has anything to do with me. And I was right. And it was that's when the psak came out. Remember that? I don't know if you know, when the Rebbe was in this room at the time. And it's interesting, the Rebbe's reaction, which was no reaction actually. The Rebbe was looking at Sefer. Rebbe Groner was in the room with the Rebbe, and Binyamin Klein walked in. And he said that he thinks, he said quietly, he thinks there's a psak from the court, because he got a phone call. The Rebbe didn't even look up from the Sefer. Now remember, the Rebbe was kochen sich in this, and you could see it in the sichas, real passionate and so on. As if it's like really, why are you telling this to me almost? And then the Rebbe, without looking up, says, and what's the psak? It's coming with news, tell us exactly what the psak is, So he says, noch nicht sicher. Where he said he thinks it's not but so he went out and then he confirmed. He came back and he said, I don't know if he said that or not. He said that Gudis Chabad won the case. The Rebbe won the case, and the Rebbe did not react. You'd think the Rebbe would say something. Rebbe Groner asked the Rebbe, does the Rebbe want to do something? Farbrengen, organize something, anything? It's like it should be a simcha. After all, the Agmas Nefesh. And the Rebbe said, the Rebbe said. I heard this from obviously first sources, and it's interesting. Right away, my reaction when I heard it, I was a little surprised. You think they would want to know details. No. Well, my first reaction was exactly, I reminded myself, what was the Alter Rebbe's reaction? What did he write when he came out of prison? You'd think he'd write a major letter of simcha and so on. Katenti mikol achsadim. Famous Ageres HaKedesh Simon Beis. Humility. Katenti. I'm diminished. I'm humbled. Kol achsadim, the Eibishter did. The words that Yaakov said, exactly also when he came out from Lavan's clutches. It's interesting how tzaddikim, a Rebbe, they don't look at it, my personal gain, I know something to start dancing now. Everything is from the Lamaila. You have to know what Lamaila, and I don't know if I heard from the Rebbe, maybe some of you can remind me, the Rebbe may have hinted to it in a sikha, I think maybe that night when the Rebbe spoke. But the Rebbe is, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the Rebbe compared it a little like Luchas Shnias. The Luchas Shnias, Matan Teira, The ganzen Trask, Kelos of Rokim, there was a whole light and sound show. When you read the Chumash, Kel Shefer, Chazak, Me'ed, stronger and louder and all that. And what does Medrash say? That there was Sholta Ayin Hora. You make too much noise, you attract everybody's attention, including the Tzacha Keneged. You suddenly agresa Simcha. And what happens 39 days later? Chet Egel. So you have to be careful. But Fele Vecha Al Tismach and other reasons, you have to be humble. So comes the second luchas. This time the Eibishter says, no, this is happening in private. Kedush Kadoshim, Lamayla, Moshe, and the Eibishter alone, nobody was there. V'chashoy, Yom Kippur, luchas shnias. That doesn't mean that it's a less simcha. Actually, Chassidus explains that chashoy is even more powerful than noise. The Zohar says, Kehanim serve quietly. They're not supposed to speak during the Aved in the Mikdash. Levim, Ameshedim, they sing. So the Zohar asks, which is louder? Which is stronger? Singing or silence? So everyone would say singing is loud. Everyone hears it, and Celebedik and Freilach and Metanz. So the Zohar says no, shtik is higher. Because it's so high, it can't even express itself in a call. Like when you see a person is really, Pnimius touched, they can't even express themselves. I mean, in the negative, you see the mamish,
Lower than olive.
shock. When someone is in shock, they can't even cry. Crying is already a dive. So the deeper you go, the less expression there is. The keil de mamadako, or there's a keil de loyishtame. What Chassidus brings is also from the Zeh. There's a voice, you hear it. Dibur. There's libel pumala galia. There's things you can't express in words. As much as you speak, certain feelings you can never express. So you'd think that's lower or higher? It's higher. That's why it can't be expressed. And the deeper you go, the less expression. So this katenti doesn't mean there's no simcha and there's nothing going on. It means you gotta zachmiyashav zayin. It's interesting how the Rebbe reacted, because the Rebbe also knew that Chassidim can sometimes get a little too excited, and it could become a simcha shel helelus. And it could be that Rebbe also wanted to do it in a Frierdiker way, in a Chassidish way, and it was very subdued that first day. The Rebbe Taka spoke at night, but listen to the first words. It's not, the Dan Notzach and let's start dancing at Simchas Teir in the Welt. No, it wasn't at all. You could see the Rebbe speaks about the Agmas Nefesh, he hints to it, like, why did we have to go through this Helm? Kemuvin, things did change in the next day or two. Yeah, but I don't think it's a change. The Rebbe didn't change his opinion. It's once he prosthesis, so to speak, and there was the katenti. Yeah, we sing and dance Yutes Kislev, but you start always with a measure of humility. You always start with making sure that the simcha is not gloating. What does the Alter Rebbe write in katenti? Lo ylisrik aleha. That the Chassidim shouldn't gloat and come and say, we won. Why? Because then you get your yeshus mixed into it, even if it's a yeshus of kedusha. It's just itself a lesson in life. That, I know, like I said earlier, it's very easy to dance and celebrate. It's harder to be a Pnimius'dike where you process it. When we saw the Rebbe dance Simchas Torah, I always felt, at least, it wasn't stam a dancing. Talking about a Rebbe, it was a Pnimi and a Atzmi. And all year round there was a certain, what should I say, dignity of a melech. And in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur you saw Yom Nerayim with the Rebbe Blue Shefer, Yom Kippur, the different tefillas and so on. And then Simchas Torah, it wasn't, now the Rebbe's letting loose in his dancing. It's the same Pnimis coming into now Simcha. And he didn't dance Rosh Hashanah like that. So it's an Atzmizdike dancing. It's very different than a Chetzenius dancing. It's hard to explain. When the Rebbe, I remember when he was dancing, so all the years Simchas Torah, the Rebbe danced with the Rashag. Memal of the Rashag was not well, so the Rebbe danced alone, the only time that year. And again, after, of course, Memches, when the Memtes. No, that's when he was in style, but I think Memches. Yeah, because he was not well, yeah. And, but Chassidim was always, he held back the Rebbe because he would really get dizzy after a few turns, the Rashag. But still, but then when the Rebbe danced alone, then you saw the Rebbe with Ad Bola, so to speak. And it's hard to describe. It was a real Atzmizdike dance. It was Simcha, but it was not the Simcha you usually see. People speak, they dance. It was like when the Rebbe said L'chaim. So maybe people say L'chaim, they start becoming a little foolish. Everyone is nichnas on Yotze Sod. Their Sod is who you are. you have shtusim inside, then that comes out. And by the Rebbe, when the Rebbe drank Purim Tov Chai, listen to the sikhs that the Rebbe said later he didn't remember. The deepest sugyas of Chassidus, Eira and Eir. You could hear the Rebbe's voice. You could see already he's under the effect of Kavyachol. But the Sod of the Rebbe is as Mouthpiece and Pnimius'dike. And I think it's a lesson. Obviously, we're not Rebbes, but we don't have to be Mahadin and being Chitzenim either. We are not Rebbes. We have to look at sometimes Pnimius'dike. And again, I think that it's so easy to run into the Chitzenius, and we're Chassidim. Chabad Chassidim is Pnimius. Pnimius means you're looking to look a little deeper, you look a little more humble. It's not like, doing nonsense and stuff like that. You have to really take seriously this Aveda. My good friend Alter, sitting right behind me. Yeah, please rise, and we're gonna dissect the Pnimi now.
Let's start with the bigger one.
Size doesn't matter when it comes to Pnimi.
It changes the reflective Pnimi.
Look, there's a good shaila. What's the difference between a chitzin, a Pnimi, and a atzmi? So Chassidim talk about that. Pnimi is one level, atzmi is even higher level. But let's start with Pnimi. So I spoke about it last night as well. The famous sikhs of Purim Mem Zayin, which if you haven't listened to them, it's one of the ones you must listen to. I mean, you must listen to everything, but if you're going to choose, it's unbelievable sikhs. The last Farbrengen sikhs there. The one first about Mashiach, with the Rebbe speaking about Nossi and Akel. It's essentially a preview of Chavches Nisan Nun Aleph. More barichas. And then the sikh afterwards about Isbaru V'Islabnu Advarim. Unbelievable sikhs. And I didn't think about it then at the time. None of us did, because we didn't, when you're living through it in Mem Zayin, you don't see the big picture. You see what's going on, and didn't really understand everything. A lot of people then didn't know what Hei Teves was, like many people don't know what it is today, frankly. The Alter Rebbe went out of prison, time of, it vindicated Geulah Chassidus. But Hei Teves is more, so Purim was just Teves Shvat Od, 2 months later. And I have no question, the Rebbe speaks about in Yonim, the reason he speaks about it that time. Then Vayikra Mem Zayin, which was Rei Nissen, famous sikh about Nisim and Nitzchis and Nisim, the maamar Tofresh Pei, Reish is going Mamolek, that a Rebbe is Nitzchi, Kedusha Lezazim and Kema, and even his Kalim. You're familiar with the maamar? The Frierdiker Rebbe writes in the maamar there a story when he was Tofresh Mem Hei or Mem Vov, which means the Frierdiker Rebbe was 5 or 6 years old. In the maamar. This is the first maamar the Frierdiker Rebbe delivered. If you read Ashkafta the Rebbe, he called in Rabbi Rifkin and said, the Tat hat gesagt, dass sagen Chassidus. Aber ich will nicht, damit ich kann sagen Chassidus, aber ich kann nicht folgen. Ich komme rein in Zimmer und ich will sagen, für dich Chassidus. In other words, he didn't want to say a maamar in public. It was right after the Shiva. Right after Beis Nissen. It must have been after Beis Nissen. It must have been right before Pesach. And so he said, "You come in my room, and I'll tell you the maamar, and that way I'm yetzer of that my father told me to do, the Rebbe Rashab." Berel Rifkin writes in the Shkaf the Rebbe that he left the door open and told Chassidim. So the Chassidim gathered and they heard the maamar from outside the room. So it wasn't just him. So in this maamar, Eish's Gei Mamolik, which is like the Rebbe, Bos Siligani of the Rebbe, the first maamar is the last maamar of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So this too, the last maamar of the Rebbe Rashab is Eish's Gei Mamolik. He talks a lot about Klippa and had the famous stories Purim that year, Purim right before Beis Nissen. How the Rebbe Rashab was not inspalled from the Efsektia and all that. So in the maamar, the Frierdiker Rebbe talks a lot about Nitzchis. He talks in first in Atzilus, Eris and Kalim, that the Kalim are also Nitzchim. Why? Because they're Iuva Gamuyachad, they're bottled to the air. And therefore, mitzad their bittul, even though a keli on its own is not kiyum atzmi, but because of the air, it's a channel for the air, so it assumes also the property of nitzchis. Then he goes on in parentheses. Yeshlema, this is kedusha le'zazim im kema, and he says the mokim haterev atfila vatzadik, the place where he learned and where he davened. His kedusha is always there, and also kol kelov. All his kalim, all his, you could say, instruments, utensils. Kalim is belongings, which includes his table, his chair. all the Kedusha is aleim. And then he says, V're'isi, around Tafresh Mem Hei Mem Vov, which would mean the Frierdiker Rebbe was born Tafresh Mem, around 5 or 6 years old. So somewhere else it says that he was in the room, the Chassidus room of the Rebbe Marash. It was after this Talkus, of course. And he was hiding there, playing there. He saw his father walk in. He said he was wearing the whole official levush, with chagura, with a gartel. And he stood at the table of the Rebbe Marash, K'moy Shahoya, exactly as it was set up in the days before Tafresh Mem Gimel. That would have been 2-3 years early before this Talkus. He says, his lips were moving, Rebbe Rashab, speaking, Bocha Harba. And he cried much, cried greatly, or cried much. I'd say Bocha Harba. A lot of crying. And this is proof, obviously, because he's standing by the table, by the chair, that the Kedusha Le'ezazimim came. It's all in the maamar, that first maamar. Vayikra Mem Zayin, the Rebbe cites it by Arichas Geulah. Agav, just as a footnote, that people often ask me if the Rebbe ever gave compliments on the Hanochis or the Mouthpiece. No, we didn't get many compliments. The biggest compliment was the Rebbe was Magiyat. Once you Magiyat, that's like it. This becomes a final version. But on this Sikha, I had the schus to prepare it. There was Magiyat pretty heavily. And then the Likut the Sikhas of that week. So the Likut was usually a Sikha, a random Sikha taken from previous years. And the Rebbe sent out and said they should translate this Sikha. So that week, Likut the Sikhas came out, translation in Hebrew of this Sikha, word for word. And on it, the Rebbe wrote.
There was Magiyat again in Hebrew?
No, he wasn't Magiyat. Maybe a few agos. I don't think much. I'm almost sure he wasn't. Maybe he touched it up. That I have to check. I don't remember now. But he wrote. Anybody remember the lashon? I was mafasim it, I think, last year. He wrote a compliment that it's like the dvarim, like they're well presented. So just as an aside, not that I need to toot my horn. I just felt that some of you should know this. Okay. But the Sikha, I think the Rebbe really, the compliment was not so much about the writing, it was the Teichen Sikha was mamish, the story of Hei Teves. And Nitzchis and Areb. And Purim Mem Zayin, what does the Rebbe talk about? Mamish the words I said before. He says these words. That ich sich almal the Shaila, the grace of Shaila. Why Mashiach didn't come yet. Again, I repeat, you must listen to the Sikha. To me, it's a chiyuv to listen. Every person should listen to the Purim Mem Zayin Sikha. Whole Farbrengen is good to listen to, but especially those. I think I don't remember which Sikha is there, but you can find them very easily. Was it the 7th and 8th Sikha, maybe 8th and 9th? I don't remember. It would be one of the last Farbrengen, by the way, the public Farbrengen. What was the last public Farbrengen in Barabim Choel B'Mei Achel? Which one?
Last week.
Yeah, but big Farbrengen, like this time, Vav Tishrei Memches. Yeah.
Ready for a while. It wasn't broadcast.
Right. Broadcast now, but when was the actual last? Which year? Okay, so this was Purim Mem Zayin. Purim was never broadcast, by the way. Purim was never broadcast. The Rebbe said why? Because it's Isha Beisei, it's like more of a... Huh? Yeah.
What was the reason why?
Because Purim is more for the mishpacha.
Even on the radio, wasn't?
Radio, maybe radio probably.
First time wasn't broadcast.
Huh?
Was the first radio.
Purim was never broadcast. Anyway, Purim Mem Zayin. So B'kitzur, the Rebbe says like following: that what's the reason the Geulah didn't come yet? He said that Shver was mefasim in Alta L'Tshuva, Alta L'Geulah so many years ago. Why didn't the Geulah come? And the Rebbe Bavarns, he says you can't say it was a ketz or a Esrotzen, and and we're not zeicha like so many times. Samagvov. Over the years, there was always opportune times, and it didn't happen. Why can't you say that? Because it came down b'tfus. Tfus is l'deirus. Bottom line, the Rebbe did not accept it was just a passing moment. So why did the Geulah not come? And the Rebbe says, I'm not chazing word for word, but the Teichen clearly. The only time I ever heard the Rebbe say these words, La'achrei ribi yegiyah, after much exertion, after much effort, the only answer I found. Now, interesting, first of all, the Rebbe should say that he had Yigiyah, and more importantly, that he tell us that he had Ribu Yigiyah, which means he wanted us to know that it did not come easy, this answer. that it took a Haravanya from the Rebbe. Can imagine. That what? That's the Ibegegangen von Hanossi zu Hakel. And the Rebbe explained, if his kashrus was Kiddaboy, so then when the Chassidim would do the kashrus, so the Rebbe could do the job. But since Mesad Nismai Talavovis, so you read the Saderis, I remember the exact Loshen, this kashrus is not that strong. So now the work has gone over from the Nossi to Hakel to the people. Kamat, that's almost the same teichen as Chav Chesnis. I did everything, now you have to do something. That's the teichen of it. At the time, I'll tell you the truth, it was a 6-hour Farbrengen. And you know, when you're in a Yam Shein Lemsof, you almost lose all this. I don't remember, after the Farbrengen, people talked about it, but it wasn't like, because it was after 6 hours. And you remember, the Rebbe was like, it was like relentless. My name is Gaber. But over the years, you start listening to the sikhs, you start realizing Chav Chesnisim was 10 minutes, 5 minutes. So is the impact.
Very direct.
Huh?
It's very direct.
No, but this sikh is just as revolutionary, 100%. Listen to it. Even more details. Al Capone makes no difference, so what? I remember I was driving back from Montreal. We went to visit my children. So we were in a van, a bunch of Chassidus, all of Asholem, Zalman, Deitch, Yosef Deitch. Remember the Yibad L'chaim, Motel Chaim was there. It was like it was a car. And what do you do at a 9-hour drive? So tapes of the Rebbe. The whole thing with the Rebbe. And Purim Zayin was playing. I don't remember what year it was. It must have been early Nuns. It was after Gimel Tammuz. I think it was Nun Daled and Hey, maybe. They're playing it. This Purim Farbrengen comes to this Sikha. Now, I knew the Sikha. I had written it. But sometimes you have to hear it enough to get... I heard it. I said, wow. It was after Gimel Tammuz, so... And I remember I asked them if they could play it again. So we played the Sikha, when you have a 9-hour drive, you can play a lot of hours. And remember, there was no cell phones then, so there was no other distractions. So all you have is either you're going to talk Lashon Hara with the people in the car, or you're going to listen to the Sikha. And this was extremely intriguing. So we played it probably 15 times, that Sikha. So, because you want to hear every nuance and so on. And that's when I realized, I said, 1 second, this is like... And this was no Chav Chesnis, that happened already. But I saw that the Rebbe was already developing this idea, Mem Zayin, that's like 4 years earlier. And it's 2 months after Hei Teves. So you start putting the pieces of the puzzle together, and Vayikra Mem Zayin. And I realized, I had like an epiphany. Oh, something here. Hei Teves, the Rebbe said that the Even HaBeichen for Svarim is when you learn in them. And the Rebbe belongs to Chassidim. The Rebbe is saying Purim Mem Zayin as going from the Rebbe to the Chassidim. That's like almost like the same teichen. The Rebbe belongs to Chassidim. And the Chassidim now, so to speak, Kavyochel control it. At least in some level. So is it not connected? Of course it's connected. But it's a shayliv. So you start understanding Hei Teves in almost in a Geulah way. That there's something we have to do. Now, in the maamar Basel Gani Yud Aleph, the Rebbe made it clear. Because all of us would say, 1 second. Why should we do it? The Rebbe should do it. But the Rebbe says it doesn't matter what, it's not Bechira, it's not Bechira Seinu, it's not Avidah Seinu, it's not, but it's Seinenu even. That's not the question here. It's a fact, that's what it is. What did the Rebbe say Sunday to that woman? Sunday after Chav Chesnis, going around in the WhatsApp. It's unbelievable. You could see she's sincere. The Rebbe said someone that's chayin action ad mosai. This woman lost a child. You could see clearly, she says that. And she says to the Rebbe, crying, that the Rebbe said, that the Rebbe's like, she said, the Rebbe's gave it over to us. The Rebbe what's going to be with my child, she says to them. What do you mean us? Why did the Rebbe leave us hanging? She used those words. The Rebbe's leaving us hanging. In English. And the Rebbe says to her, yeah, that, what do you want? I'm only one person. You're putting it on me. I'm telling you all have to do it. I'm only one person. She says, you're not one person, you're the Rebbe. Interesting, but the Rebbe didn't know he's the Rebbe, but that's what he said. So the Rebbe says, if I'm the Rebbe, if I'm what you're calling me, Rebbe, I'm telling you what to do. You don't tell me what to do, basically. He didn't say that. He said, I'm telling you that you have to do it, and the Rebbe pointed to everyone there. You, and you, and you, and you. He listened to it, and the Rebbe had, obviously, Rachmanis on a woman, clearly, she said, what's going to be with my child? That's what she says. I never really researched, but clearly something happened. And it was not a woman playing games. It wasn't like someone set her up to push the Rebbe. Coming from Atzabrach and Afresh, she's crying out to the Rebbe. And you see that the Rebbe was so adamant, even to a woman like that, that it means that this is like etched in stone. This is not like, okay, you're going to bet me rachamim, and I'll say, okay, you know what, I'm going to do it, you don't do it. There's something here, we may never understand this. Why we need to be suddenly a partner with the Rebbe in this, we're not on that level. But something. So you could say, remember there was some Chassidim that said, so the Rebbe said, Purim Mem Zayin, was felt in Niskashus. So we have to add Niskashus, so maybe the Rebbe will take back the job. I don't think that would have worked.
No, he's acting on something he said 36 years ago in the beat of the seats.
Right. No, but then it was understood. No, the truth is, it was always understood till Purim Mem Zayin that, we're little simple people. What do you want, Rebbe? You want us to do Mivtzayim? We'll do Mivtzayim. Go on Shlichus? We'll go on Shlichus. Talk in shuls. I don't mean talk during davening. I mean go speak Chassidus in shuls. Came out the wrong way. Maybe that's how it happened. Someone said, "I gave him the shul." Anyway, so that's how we always saw it. We do our part. The Rebbe had all these campaigns and Mivtzayim and Pulis, and then the Rebbe will take it all and go and bring the Geulah. But the Purim Mem Zayin was like a shtickle shift in the contract, because the Rebbe says Ibi gang for Nanosi Taka. So I have my theories. I can bold with my theories about it. But one thing is for sure, the Rebbe said it. That is no question. How you explain it, we'll leave the Maskili Hador to explain it. So suddenly everything comes together. Hei Teves, message, Purim Mem Zayin, Vayikra Mem Zayin, and the Nechov Ches Nisan. And the bottom line of it is, what are we going to do? So this is the place where everybody gets uncomfortable. Everyone says, what am I supposed to do? I'm nobody. And I don't know. I cannot control myself. When I go to Farbrengen, or if I bring, or even if I'm sitting someone else Farbrengen, I can't see how you can't bring this topic up. Because this is the only thing that we have not lived up to. Mivtzayim, you could always do more Mivtzayim. But millions of Jews have put on film. And Chabad houses cover the world. And I'm not saying there can't be more. But this thing remains, anyone that's a shtickl chassid, it has to haunt you. It remains unfinished business. The Rebbe made a statement, made it very clear. So I can't see how we can Farbring any day from that matter and not bring this up. So that's what I do. And especially Hei Teves, where the Rebbe made it very clear. I mean, what means that Rebbe belongs to Chassidim? No? We always looked at it the other way around. The Chassidim belong to the Rebbe. The Rebbe is our boss, so to speak, and then we're bottled with help us tell us what to do. Doesn't mean that changed. Of course that's the way it is. But it belongs to Chassidim because Kavyochel, the Rebbe bound himself to what we have to do. The Rebbe says in the Ha'ara and Asicha that the Rebbe can bring in the Mashiach Alein, that Gewalt Mezaka Zayin under to be part of it. And once you're part of it, it's like the Eibishter Kavyochel. Once he said, L'maisi Yadecha Tichsef, and he said he wants Aveda B'kei Chatzmei, whether you like it or not, that's what God wants. The Eibishter wants it. You say, what do you want from us? You can do anything you want. What are you asking us to do? That's the Desava Kodesh Baruch. You like it or not, that's how it is. So it's not a pella that the Rebbe, Tzadikim Deim Lebeiram, can also expect. So what are we going to do? No? Tell me, what are we going to do? So I have my cop-out is this, that we're already old men, and we're over the hill, like the Bochum like to say, people already shaped, jaded, the balabatish, grob, and all the good shvachim. But Bochum, you're like fresh stock. You're still idealistic. You still dream, right? You still think you can change the world. I hope you don't become too adult, too mature, too quickly. Because I see that's really where the hope is. And I've said it many times. The Rebbe changed the world with Bochum. He didn't change the world with Alter Chassidim. Alter Rebbe changed it with Alter Chassidim. But today, after Tem Chetmimim, Tafresh Nun Zayin, everything changed. Yetzim Muhammad's based David. That's why personally, frankly, when I see Bochum get involved in politics, it breaks my heart, because that's the only ones we had last hope. Everyone else can be politics. You're meant to be the Hevel Shem Beichet, and don't get too mature too quickly. That's the point, because then you can maybe really change the world. Because you have to be a little crazy to do that, Like I was at an event a few weeks ago in Florida. It was a Torah Science Conference in Bell Harbor. And Rabbi Lipskin introduced a shliach. And he says, this shliach, he didn't say it quite these words, but basically he said he's illiterate. He says he went to Hol Torah, never studied English, never studied any of the sciences, but he's a writer and he's a speaker. So, it came across like, he's illiterate, but he still can say something,
You talking about you then?
It wasn't me.
He's not illiterate.
I know he's not. I know more than anything.
No, it wasn't me. That wasn't the compliment to me. He gave me other compliments. And the shliach got up and very wisely said something brilliant, actually. He gets up. I can tell you it was Laser Shemtov from Uruguay. He gets up and says, thank God I was illiterate, because if I knew what I was getting into, I would never have gone on shlichus. If I knew what business administration is, what fundraising is, building a community, building a school. And it's an interesting truth. It's a truth that Rebbe instilled passion, revolution. And he didn't say go to a shlichus university like some people say we need to do, and like figure out what accounting is. You ask shluchim, they didn't even know what the word accounting is. I could tell you some shluchim still don't know what it is. I don't know if that's a mile, but it's a mile when you go out. It's not a mile 20 years later. That I can tell you. Agree on to that. What's accountability? I don't even know what that means. So I say, and no, honestly, the Rebbe said Atomim is Kedusha Le'Zazmim came as well. We'll always remain Bochrim. I feel I'm a Bocher at heart. I still feel I'm 17, 18 years old, whether you believe it or not. Like I always say, 17 years old with 48 years experience? What's 63 minus 17? Who's an accountant here? I need the numbers. You have a calculator?
Go from a 60-year-old to an Neshama.
Yeah. With the tat is yon. However, so I am telling you right now, I'm speaking specifically to the Bochrim here. Any Bochrim wants to make a revolution, invite me. I'm happy to partner and join. Want to feel young again? That one thing I definitely don't tell me that you want to feel old, because that should be the other way around. So I think that it is the younger generation that will. I think that's where there's some hope. And that doesn't mean that some of us are a little older, we give up on us, but I really think that's where it's going to come from. So, it's your job. L'chaim. I have some ideas. I'll talk about that.
Young, reckless, Farbrengen to the
No, a nigun. Last night. It's not an Elam that sings, huh? What's going on? You want to say something?
Okay, good.
No, seriously. I don't have to monopolize it.
They came to hear you, not to hear me. Send a reminder before you came.
Which mimer?
Their mitzvahs.
Nun base?
They're a science.
What did you come out?
I lost the case again. I needed the money. One in the $1 million, but I think the Asher Nikoleiver one of the saving of boats. So it comes up in and the nation starts to come up. Think a lot about the war.
You were the picture that went around the world.
It seems like it's because when they say shaman, it's like a culmination.
There's a video of another guy.
All picking up the downhill. I thought I never really do with these guys in my life. So getting in the thing, guys, like what do we have? They don't have the same question. They don't have
It's no mechanical. Either straight or not. You see, no, but I'm going to finish before 8:15.
How did you dare not come?
Where?
My wife, I'm wanting to hike there.
Thank you for coming. Trust me, I'm exhausted. I was up last night half a night also. Go to sleep tomorrow. Okay, l'chaim.
Nobody else has it. I never.
Okay. L'chaim. Everybody knows, right, that Rosh Hashanah Tov Kuf Hei, the Baal Shem Tov writes in a letter to his brother-in-law, Rabbi Gershon Ketover, that Rosh Hashanah Tov Kuf Hei made Aliyas HaNeshama Gan Eden. He went to the Heichel of Mashiach, And he asked Mashiach, Emesoy Kosimar, Sir, when are you going to come, Mar? And Mashiach answered, when your well springs will spread outward. Now, this everybody's heard, right? We have a nigun for it. We got it all figured out. However, celebrating Hei Teves, which is celebrating B'chlal Sfarim, but the Rebbe especially, we know the Rebbe Sfarim, and the Rebbe talked a lot about Chassidus, the story of the Frierdiker Rebbe when he went out of Russia. So moving that even though it was mama's danger to his life, because he had been in prison and it was mama's on the edge, they could have killed Rahman al-Islam. So finally the Soviets decided to send him out of the country. Frierdiker Rebbe is not ready to go. He wants his svarim. He wants his manuscripts. So even the family argued with Frierdiker Rebbe. It's achsarkonis nefoshes, koch nefesh. You can get the svarim later. Every moment we delay, they can change their mind. Who knows why? I mean, you're talking about living in a concentration camp. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, no, shumei for not. And the Rebbe explained, because they're not svarim. But Frierdiker Rebbe, Aksav, Yad, the manuscript of the Rebbe Rashab, was the Rebbe Rashab. And he's not leaving without his father. And he's not leaving without his grandfather. He's not leaving without his great-grandfather. It wasn't. That is the Tzemach Tzedek. That is the Rebbe Marash. That's the Mittler Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe. You know, for us, it's like when you hear it the first time, it sounds like, wow, I never thought of that way. A book. You can always publish it again, republish it, make a copy. I had the schus for a period of time to spend inside the Kedush Kadoshim of the Rebbe's of the Good Schid Chabad library. So there's a particular room that has all these ksavim, and they've only grown over the years. I'm talking about original manuscripts. Some of them are bound in volumes. Some of them you still see the bookworms lines in because it's like mamish cloth. It's not the paper they use on books today. And you see the ink, and you mamish. I mean, you touch it, you're like touching a thing that Rebbe touched. That's what he wrote. And that's what the Rabbeim spent. So when you see it with your own eyes and you hold it, you get a sense of it. It's not printed, it's Ksaviyat Kedush. The Alter Rebbe, you see the Alter Rebbe, you see where the ink dripped. You see the page, you can even see sometimes it's yellow. I mean, it's amazing. Some books the binding has already fallen apart, so just single pages. But it's something. Why did I do this? Because I was working in Sefer Lekutim, in Tafshin Lamed Zayin, 10 years before Hei Teves, Mem Zayin. So the Rebbe established Sefer Lekutim, which was an encyclopedia of the Tzemach Tzedek Chassidus. And then in Lamed Ches, Lamed Tes, more ksavim were coming from Varsha. They had found things that during the war were either lost or confiscated, and now they were coming back to the Rebbe. It was a big simcha by the Rebbe, like Pidyon Shvuyim Mamish. Again, the expression you only say by people. You don't say Pidyon Shvuyim on objects, but Svarim by the Rebbe is Shvuyim, it's lives. Anon Nafshi Ksovis Yehovas, that's Kipshuti Kamashmoy. Anoichi Shem Alekecha, Anoichi, Anon Nafshi Ksovis. So the Rebbe wanted us to compare the Tzemach Tzedek's printed maamarim with the manuscripts that were coming out. A lot of them were the Tzemach Tzedek's writings. So I quickly volunteered to do it. And there was a team of us in Sefer Lekutim. One of the members of the team is sitting behind me, still there.
Oh, you were on the team?
Yeah. The team player. No, that was a tkufa there. So I mean, it was amazing. I sometimes sat 6-7 hours there. Then I'd come outside to Eastern Parkway, and I was like, you walk out from a wormhole. Really, I'd walk out because the room had a certain smell. It was like you went back in time. You spend a lot of time there. You walk outside, it was like a little daze. Yeah. And I was amazing. I saw the Mittler Rebbe's, so the story they say, the Mittler Rebbe would write so quickly that the ink was still wet. And he would write that someone else had to move the page because he would write on the table. He got to the bottom, writing the last line, he would write onto the table. And you see it. You see the last lines, half lines. So the mama see that that's not a maisela. It's tremendous to see. And each ksav is different and so on. So it's like you see it comes alive. So Frierdiker Rebbe would not leave Russia without this. This is what he's leaving without the Alter Rebbe. Now, what is he going to save his own life? The Alter Rebbe has to come with him. And the Rebbe said then very sharp words. He says, "Mereish sticker from the Rebbe." When you take a sefer from the Rebbe, you're taking a piece of his being, of his mitzias. So this idea of Hei Teves was Svarim, especially around the Chassidus of the Rabbeim, clearly. Even though the library has many other Svarim and all kinds of books, the Rebbe even speaks about, even Apikursha books. But it's all part of the library, but especially Chassidus. So when you ask the question, why did Mashiach say that? What's the kesher Yefutzim and Sechutza with Mashiach? That is totally in that. So you could say it's a Geulah. You know, like everything else is Geulah. It says, do the tzedakah, mekareves as a Geulah. So Chassidus also will bring Geulah. But clearly, the Rebbe, the Rabbeim explain it's not just so simple. It's not some Geulah, do this and we'll do that. That Chassidus in some way is a taste of Mashiach. Is Teirasa Shel Mashiach. Question, how do you say that? What does that mean? So to answer that, and this may be obvious to all of you, but sometimes it's good to even state the obvious. You have to understand what Mashiach means and what Chassidus means. And then you could say, they're the same thing. So simple Asius, because to me if you have this formula, you can then say, now I know what to do to bring the Geulah. So what is the common denominator between Chassidus and Geulah? That in both, it's the Gili Elokus within reality. In the Rebbe's Asius and Medrash, it's putting the Aleph of Alufa Shalelam into Geulah. So Geulah and Geulah is the same word except one word. Same word except one letter. Aleph. One letter. One letter changes from Golas to Geulah. Such a shift. But that one letter is not a small letter. It's called Aleph. That's Chassidus. Chassidus looks at the world. So you see a table and chairs. I see herring and potato salad. I see you guys looking at the chicken and the whatever that kugel is called. Yapchik, what is it called? Huh? Before I came here, he said to me, which yapchik you want from Malka or from Murmustin? I said, I'll deal with the ruchnis, you deal with the gashmis. How's the chicken, by the way? It's good? So this is what we see. And Chassidus sees, through the lens of Chassidus, you see Elokus. And if you see the Elokus in it, eat a little more, maybe you'll start seeing it. So what does Elokus mean? Can you explain to me what is Elokus? Chicken we see. So as I was preparing, make sure we're not deprived. Yeah, lama negara.
Why don't you send them the salad?
It's too healthy. Too healthy for me. I was once by a Pesach program, and they had strawberries covered in chocolate. So I see the guys eating the chocolate and throws out the strawberries. Says, too much fruit for me. Yeah. What?
He doesn't want to eat strawberries and bacon.
Chocolate. That's his Pnimius'dike, maybe. I don't think that was his cousin. We like chocolate, Chocolate Yago? Huh? So look. So as I was preparing yesterday, I did a program in the museum. Some of you may have heard it. So I looked at the Chassidus. I know the guerrilla marketing makes sure not one person misses it. I got it. Okay.
In Australia, they're talking about it.
On the moon, they're talking about it.
I'm sure Benjamin got there too.
He's working on it, yeah. So, I was one thing. I was looking into different things. The one thing that struck me was, and I want to thank Shmuley. He sent me the clip. Beautiful clip. Yud Shvat Tovshin Tazayin. And the Rebbe tells a story that's in Hayem Yem. But you have to hear the clip. If you want it, give me your number. I'll send it to you. It's unbelievable. So the story. Audio. Yeah. No, it's around. I want that particular clip. So the Rebbe tells the story. It's on Yem Yem. That the Alter Rebbe called in a younger man and said, "Du hast a mitzvah zum Erfahren sein b'nei Beise. You have a mitzvah to support your family. And ich habe a mitzvah v'shenantam levanecha, to teach your children. So let me bite na mitzvah mit a mitzvah. I'll give you money to support your family, and you'll teach my son, the Mittler Rebbe." Okay. Then he went away. The Rebbe says, and Hayem Yem doesn't say all the details. And then the Rebbe says, "Weiß tetzivin a kluge junger man." Apparently, he was a smart guy, and he realized he needs more from the Alter Rebbe than just this deal. So he goes back to the Alter Rebbe and says to the Alter Rebbe, "That how much you have to give me to support my family, and I rely on you. But you have to tell me, what am I supposed to teach your son?" So the Alter Rebbe Frierdiker, in the tape you can see the Rebbe pauses, and he says, "Darf lernen anheben von Aleph Beis." The Rebbe pauses and says, "Was is an Aleph? A Pintele von eben, a Pintele von unten. Das is an Aleph." The Rebbe doesn't mention Kav in the first. He says, "Was is an Aleph? A Yud von eben, a Id von unten, und a Vov, a Kav ha-mechaber, Yerushalayim, ha-mekasher b'nei. Das is an Aleph." And the Rebbe, you could hear there's like a tear in his voice. And the Rebbe says in that sikha that the shver when he chazed, he said it with the nigun hayudua. For some reason, I have a faint memory that when I first heard it many years ago, I think the Rebbe said maybe in a different Farbrengen that the first time he heard this was from his father, because obviously the Alter Rebbe said it, so it was passed on. So I'm going to explain the Rebbe's tears is however you explain the Rebbe crying. But you think about it, it captures the whole yesod of Chassidus in a simple terms. If you could instill in a child Aleph Beis, that what is an Aleph? That there's two Yuds, a pintele above, a pintele below. The Yud is the Yud of the Eibishter. Id is also from the word Yud. And Yerushalayim is the way that you bridge heaven and earth, so to speak. And a child knows this in the deepest way. This is the whole thing of Chassidus. And what's Mashiach and Geulah? When the Yud L'mayla and the Yud L'mata are connected. Now, you could eat chicken or chont or whatever it is that people eat. And yeah, you may know L'Shem Shamayim, yes, L'Shem Shamayim. But you don't, it's not one. It's definitely not one. So let me ask you something. If the whole yesod of Chassidus is to see and feel Elokus and everything, how many of us b'chlal are shaykh to that? You know, we learn Chassidus, we teach Chassidus. That's always the question that's asked. You know, these are beautiful ideas. Some of us understand it better than others. Some people say, I don't have a clue what this means. But the bottom line is, so where do we feel Elokus? And we're Chassidic Chabad, we're the Rebbe's Chassidim. And if we don't have, what do you think people who never learn Chassidus? So how do we answer that question to yourself? Someone asks you, your son, your daughter, your friend. So tell me, you're like connected to Elokus? So I'll tell you we know the conventional answers. I've been around. I do what the Rebbe tells me to do. I go on shlichus, tzayim. That's Elokus. I'm spreading. I don't know if I feel it personally, but I do what the job is done, and hopefully there'll be something that we relate to. When Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov, he was saying that when you learn Chassidus and you work with Chassidus, it's going to make you Moshiachdik. It's going to make you a person who can relate more to Elokus. Now, Kamuvon, you need a Gili Malmail. It's not all going to happen from below. A famous Samach Tzedek story with the Aha. Samach Tzedek was asked why he speaks so much about Mashiach. You can imagine the Rebbe was far more. But that's some of the, so he said, Slib the Aha. And they asked the Samach Tzedek, what's the Aha? So he said, the Aha is this. Give a moshel. Two people are having a conversation. And there's someone in the other room, and he hears the muffled conversation, but there's a wall, so you don't hear every word. He hears a word here, a word there. You know, sometimes you listen in, you can't really pick it up. So he didn't know what they're talking about. Then they come out from the room, and he asks, what were you talking about? And they tell him the topic. He says, aha, now I understand. Every fifth word. So Tzemach Tzedek said, we don't necessarily go to understand the whole story of Mashiach until Mashiach comes. But when you learn Chassidus, you start getting the aha. You start getting a word here, a word there. So when it happens, you're not a stranger to it. Yeah, you heard this already, you just didn't put it all together. I remember when I was in Morristown, so we had my mashpia was Melech Tzvibel. Remember? All of Shalom. So he was an interesting character. Big bucky, masmid and so on. And so I once asked him, you know, we were learning these maimarim, deep maimarim. I said, who understands these deep maimarim? I mean, yeah, you understand the haskala of it, but what, I know someone can imagine what means lifnei atzimtzum. The whole existence of existence is based on a tzimtzum, so how can we ever even imagine to talk about before tzimtzum? If we were before tzimtzum, we wouldn't exist. So how could someone talk about something that doesn't allow them to exist? And forget about tzimtzum, what about atzilus? We barely can understand asir ruchnis. So we're going to go to Yitzira and Bria and atzilus. So why did we learn all this? So he told me that he had this question, he asked the question, when he came the first year in the Kfutza in Tovshin Chav Beis, I think, was it? The first Kfutza that came from Israel to New York. And he asked that question at Farbrengen and Rabbi Shmuel, or Shmuel Levitten, who chazed over an answer from his great-grandfather. His name was Rabbi Geshem Ber Pahar. Now, full disclosure, it happens to be also my great-grandfather. No, today we have to be transparent, because you never know. My father's name, Geshem Ber, was named after Geshem Ber Pahar. So, a direct descendant from Geshem Ber Pahar. And he said, huh? No, daughter. Geshem Ber's daughter was married to Vel Levitten the Mashgiach and Lubavitch, who in turn had a son. She was Tema. No, a son.
Vela had a daughter that was married to Echmil Chadosh.
Okay, right. Daughter, so it's daughter after daughter, right? Yeah. Bottom line, they were all chelik elikam and maamar.
Another daughter.
Huh?
And then another daughter.
Okay, so be it. He's great uncle of my father's. Yeah. His sister was my great grandmother. You got it? Whenever when people start insulting me and they say you're a Gruziner, a Tzugekuminer, a Svadisha, I said, what about Geshem Ber Pahar? Oh, you're right. Okay, also that. So it's like a mamzer, basically. You have a little good, a little, yeah. It's fine. So he gave a moshel, which is a meididik moshel. Meididik. That Melech told me. He said that that king was once traveling in the woods, and he heard a song being played. That was like one of the most exquisite, beautiful songs. You never heard such a beautiful song. But they couldn't trace where it came from. Anyway, the king came back to the palace, I think there's another detail. The king got lost. I don't remember that part really. I don't know if it's relevant here. Came back to the palace, but he could not get that song out of his head. It's so like... So he asked all his musicians in the palace to play for him some beautiful music. They said, sing us something. Give us one tenua and maybe we can figure out what it is. I can't remember. Starts playing and I see if I hear something that you're playing, then I'll be able to say, that's it, or something similar. So they started playing and playing and playing. Beautiful music. And he kept saying that, sinish dos, sinish dos, sinish dos, sinish dos. But he couldn't get it out of his thing, couldn't forget about it. So they started inviting musicians from other parts of the world and from all over the world. He was the king, so people came. And everybody displayed their wares, their songs. All beautiful, abisanish dos. So what the mashal, the nimshal is this, that an neshama, when it's l'mayla, hears beautiful music. Then we come lamata, and the malach makes us forget everything we knew. The Alter Rebbe explains, why do you make forget if you're gonna, what's the point of teaching it if you're going to make forget? Because it remains in our, what we call superconscious. Called superconscious, not unconscious, superconscious. It's somewhere there, but it's behelam. We made to forget, but there's something we remember, there's some truth. And we go through life looking for that song. And we look everywhere. Sometimes in beautiful places, sometimes in nishtazacha beautiful places. We look for pleasure. Even the search for pleasure, mamish Minimus'dike, hedonistic pleasure. I'm throwing in a word, you'll look it up later. Okay? Pleasure. Yeah.
Not bad.
It's like what Reagan said about, he said in America, in Russia, they're so, I forgot already the whole word, I forgot it. So let's not repeat it. Okay. So that dog barking, meat, yeah.
What's mean? What's not?
Yeah. What's a bark? Yeah. Al kaponim. So we look for pleasure, or if you want to put it more psychologically, we look for love. Why do we look for love? Because Ava and Echad is the same gematria, and we look to reconnect to Hashem Echad. The love we have, whether it's between family, between spouses, between parents and children, is a me'ain. Like the Rambam says, the whole Shir HaShirim is a moshel for Knesset Yisrael and Kodesh Baruch Hu. So what are we looking for? We're looking for attachment. We're looking for connection. You can explain almost every taiva in this world, even the grubsta taivas, a search for some type of satisfaction, some connection. Now, but then you can't find it in a healthy way, so you find it in a selfish way, or you find it in other ways. But b'mekere, you're looking for something deeper, something more beautiful. And Achman al-Islam, it could be in Shel Tachnis in Lumazeh in the worst way. But as Chassidus explains, even the Grubsta Taivas in Lumazeh, like the Alter Rebbe says, the Koyach HaMesaveh is not the Taiva. The Taiva is the object of what you want. But the power to have desire, the power of desire, can be, the Alter Rebbe writes in Lekut Torah Chukas, is you say, Dose Bahar Kedesh. Because let's say your desire for Avilah, the Alter Rebbe had a burning fire in his desire, and the psychiatrist said, there's something he wants. So the Grobe Jungen thinks of one thing. There's a story in Gemara, in Rabbi Yehuda in Yerushalmi. He came into a city, his face was shining. It says it was a Mara. And the goyim there were all speculating, why is his face shining? So they all had their theories. One said he must have been malva beribus. He must have given someone a very high interest loan, so he's happy. Why? Because that's what he does. This guy, everyone associate. Another said he must have eaten a good shtickle chazan. And another one said, I don't want to repeat what he said. What would give him pleasure? So they went over to Rabbi Yehuda and they said, so tell us, why is your face shining? He says, Matzasi Tesefta Chadata. I found a new Tesefta. Chachmas Adam Teir Ponav. So everybody always associates pleasure. If I see you have pleasure, it's probably because I have the reasons I have pleasure. So the grubs to pleasures. But the Keich HaTaiva, the Keich HaMesava, says the Alter Rebbe, that's not the chson. It's good to have desires. The Sava Kodesh Baruch is a desire, it's a Taiva. But it's to be a desire for good things. The problem is the object of desire. When an adult is sitting down starting to play with little toys, it's good to have a desire, but not with toys. You should have a desire for more loftier, sublime things. Sublime? Edle Sachen. Edel, verstehst du? So, was ist Edelkeit? Sag.
Blind. Yeah.
The edler stuff is coming, the salami, I see. Right? Yeah.
I don't think there's much more movies for us.
You think I'm do my face looks like I'm looking for salami now? Is that what's coming on? Okay. The behemoth. So what's the point I'm making here? Is that everybody looks for pleasure in this world. You don't find it. The goal is to find it in Kedusha. Because we all know the Kavanah Chassidus says it's not just Kabbalah sale. If you have pleasure in what the Rebbe wants, you're going to do it a lot more than if you just do it out of Kabbalah sale. The Rebbe once said in the Farbrengen, "Wie kann man nicht..." What does the Lashon say? "Wie kann man nicht haben Geschmack in Chassidus? I feel the Nefesh Abamis hat Geschmack." And he said, when the Nefesh Abamis will epis, you're going to make sure you're going to do it. So it's a mile. Chassidus it's a mile if your Nefesh Abamis enjoys Kedusha. Yeah, there's sometimes an inyan of Iskafi, just do it as a state. But if you want it to be permanent and sustainable, when you enjoy it, it's going to be much more. So the Chassidus, Shluchim go on Shlichas, and they feel proud, even the ego sometimes. Look what I built up. That's not a chson, because a tzibul is often the van, but Chassidus is also the chazan. The goal is to get it done. And Adrab, if you enjoy it, then it's going to be done better, and nicer, and more passionate, and so on. So we all look for pleasure. What we're really looking for is that song that's somewhere in the back of our minds and our hearts. We know is there, but we don't know how to sing it. And what does Chassidus teach us? This is what Melech told me. That he heard from Rav Shmuel, from Hashem of Gerb Gesh Per Pahara. Chassidus teaches us, can't teach us the song itself, but it teaches us enough to know that the songs that you're hearing and the pleasures you have is nijdos. So someone comes and says, I remember the first year that the Rebbe did not blow Shefer, Tkir Shefer. Tavshin Nun Gimel. And I was brought up, every year was the Rebbe Shefer, there was no other option. Thank God. And I remember that year, where was I? It was not, I don't think I was in Crown Heights. Maybe I was, I don't remember. And whatever, Shefer came, and it wasn't very exciting. Definitely no pushing, that I can tell you. And someone that geblazen, and I remember feeling in my heart, I said to myself, it wasn't just the Rebbe blowing, it was Senish Das, And actually the sounds came out very smoothly. It was like, from a point of view of a trumpet blower, a pfeifer, was gewaldig. But from the point of view Yedei Sruah, Asher Yedei Sruah. So Tzemach Tzedek, the Mariel, the Tzemach Tzedek's uncle, he was already old and aging. He couldn't go to shul. So they were going to bring a minyan to his house, and they're going to blow shofar. In Atomim, I think this is told. He said, no, I want you to bring me, even in bed, bring me to shul. I want to hear from the Tzemach Tzedek, shofar. They said, what's the schleppen? Well, bring a minyan, someone will blow. He says, no. It says, Asher Yedei Sruah. He doesn't need Teikei Sruah. He doesn't need someone to blow shofar. He needs someone who knows the secret of the sound. But Yedei Sruah is an interesting expression. Since when do you know sounds? You hear sounds, you blow sounds, you trumpet, you sound sounds. But shofar is not a trumpet. It's not a guitar. It's not music. It's a neshama sound. So I remember that. So by me, I remember that story. So that very nice shofar of Sinishdas. So sometimes experiencing Elokus is not always knowing what it is, but you know that what I have is not it. And I think a chassid who learns some Chassidus and you internalize it a bit, sometimes you'll feel something, but even if you feel enough that when you're involved in something else in your life, especially a taiva, or I'm not even talking about in Yonim Asurim, even Kedush, even Shal Heter, of a Sinishdas. So that's why you learn deep in Yonim Chassidus. You start learning about Erein Sof, the Hechel Darga. You may never connect to that Darga, at least in the fullest sense, but when you get that, you go back to life, you say, nah, how does this compare to that? And that's a big madrega, because that really weakens the hold of Elam Haza in us. It's not, and that shouldn't be underestimated. When the Rebbe spoke about sleeping in a sukkah, in Tovshin Lamed, sukkahs, and the big question, why don't we sleep in a sukkah? Teishvu kein taduru. And Halacha, Shulchan Aruch, the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. So we know that Mittler Rebbe said, Akifim de Bina, we came and schlafen, Akifim de Bina. So the Rebbe asked, so therefore came the Amitztayer, Potem in Asukah. Now we have the Mouthpiece, Sicha, Amitztayer. Makifim de Bina, Amitztayer. It's Makifim de Bina. So the Rebbe asked the Klotz Kasha, who feels Makifim de Bina? The Mittler Rebbe felt it. The rest of us, what's the problem? Do you ever you think you have a problem falling asleep in a sukkah because Makifim de Bina is going to wake you up? Huh? It's all for you. Yeah.
I'm asking for a fork.
I grew up a young guess with that fork. You just put it in your. Tzadik eichel seva nafshi. This is not meant to have no pleasure in that. It's supposed to be just because you're yeah. Everyone has their eyes on you. They want to see what you do. You need a knife too? And don't worry. It looks like he's going to get to it. We need a dugma. When you talk these things, you need like a living example. Okay. So you take a piece, tell us how you eat, and we do. They said when the Alter Rebbe gegessen, it was Keich HaGvul Shebe Ein Sof. Really? Keich HaGvul Shebe Ein Sof. It's been mislabish in a piece of food. So the Rebbe said, so why do we, who feels Makif in the Bina? So the whole reason it's tired, what's tired? You don't have no tzar. Who's feeling Makif in the Bina? So the Rebbe answered an interesting answer. He says you have tzar because you don't feel it. And then the Rebbe went on and said, what happens if you don't have tzar because you don't feel it? He says, so you have tzar over the fact that you don't feel it. And the Rebbe continued on. He says, and if you don't have that, you have tzar over not having tzar over not having tzar over not having tzar. And viful dargas midaf haben, somewhere you're going to have tzar. So it's interesting word, like, in other words, it's not that you don't, if you feel it, but you have tzar that you don't. So sometimes that is enough to touch somebody. I use it sometimes, in drushes to give Shabbatons, and there comes, you have to say something before Havdalah. So why do we use B'samim? One of the reasons is to revive the faint, because some people are going to faint when Shabbos ends. Going from a darga of such Gedusha to Altiri Avdi Yankiv to Chel. Now tell me, when's the last time you saw someone faint before when Shabbos ends? I think a lot of people actually find it a shtickle simcha. I've always had a theory that the Saturday night fever was a lot of Frumi Eden, that all day they were building up their repression, and then Shabbos ends, so they went out to party, so it became a Saturday night to party. I don't know. I never did the research, but it's a thought. So Psalmim comes. So it says some is leheshiv v'saruach, because you're fainting. It's like smelling salts. So I always ask the question: anybody's ready to faint here? No, but maybe you're ready to faint because you're not ready to faint. Like the Rebbe says about Sukkah, you have pain over the fact that you don't feel that Shabbos is ending. But it just comes. The clock is now after Shabbos. Weiter gegangen. So what Chassidus teaches is a higher sensitivity. That you can say to yourself, you know what, I might be not there, but I know what I have is nishdas. That's a big thing. Don't underestimate that. Because it means if you've seen something real, like what it says about Simchas Be'Sheva, Mishal Yirah Simchas Be'Sheva Lo Yirah Simcha Miyamav. Because once you've seen the real thing, then nothing else is really going to take you. I remember I was once at an event, and there was a lot of different, from alle Kreisen Eden, from Litvishen, from Chassidus and so on. And then I was giving a talk, and I got up there, and I just felt, I don't know, I got a little frustration. I had to vent. So I can't say I ziddled them, but I definitely didn't compliment them. I said some things that were pretty sharp. It wasn't personal. I just spoke about, I wanted to give a little taste of Chabad Chassidus. And I remember one of the Litvish guys, he knew me. He said to me, "You're sitting in front of one of the Geulah Yisroel, one of the big Talmidei Chachamim, and like you're just talking as like a little hadras covet and so on." And I didn't. I did not insult him or did not. But I didn't. They probably saw that I didn't have the total awe and bittul.
Who was the guy?
Mine of Kamina. It doesn't matter. Whoever it would be, I'd have that feeling. So. And honestly, I was Chaz Rishon. And I'm just didn't insult anyone. It was not a Chil Hashem in any way. It wasn't like. It was a feeling. And I spoke about Chassidus, and I spoke about what a tzaddik is according to Tanya. That's not just machshava dibur maisa. That you could have what Rabbi the Alter Rebbe writes in Perikid Gimel. That you could be mekayim Torah mitzvahs kol yomov, and still have a beinin because you weren't mekevish your keiches, you were kevish your machshava dibur maisa, which would create an uproar, of course, in the Jewish world when the Alter Rebbe wrote that, because it means you can be mamish perfect your whole life and you still only a beinin. Because you didn't kill your Yetzer Hara, you just killed the machshava dibur maisa. So I shared a little of that. That behavior is important, but it doesn't mean you've been transformed. And this is what this guy tells me. So then afterwards we sat a little informally, and I said, I have to tell you something. This is by no means Chaz v'Shalom insult to anyone. If you would have been in the Dal Ramas of the Rebbe for a few minutes, and definitely for a longer time, you see the 24/7 connection. Like every minute was counted for. And it wasn't just a gun and learning Torah and all that, but the whole you lived like in a tefa checher by a Farbrengen. Then whatever you see, you just don't, it's not it. So I'm not taking away anything from the Gadol. But when you see the Beis Hamikdash, then if it's not the Beis Hamikdash, you just don't have the same, it's not it. Anyway, I don't know if they all liked what I said, but I still said it. And I once heard, I never confirmed, but I heard the Baba Sali was asked, he was a chassid of the Rebbe, and he was asked why the Rebbe didn't go to Israel. So we have all the answers. He said something which I found very chassidish hergish. He said like this: Zman habayis, the Beis Hamikdash, Eretz Yisrael, the Beis Hamikdash is like Pnei Chama, it's like a sun. After Churban Beis Hamikdash, and Eretz Yisrael is b'churbana, and the Beis Hamikdash is not there, so Eretz Yisrael becomes like Pnei Levana. And where's the Pnei Chama? This Pashtusa the Meisha of every generation, the Rebbe. And the sun doesn't want to embarrass the moon. That's why he said the Rebbe doesn't go to Israel. That's what he said. You ever heard this? I mean,
yes, it's printed in Neshama Sasma Chaverecha.
That word? Okay. Good. So we have a maamar. So what does that mean? Chaz v'Shalom, it's not dismissing Eretz Yisrael as Hashem Elokachava. It's just that when you see something real. I remember once hearing from Rabbi that there was a chassid. His name was his first name Alperovich. Eretz Yisrael. I forgot his first name. Chaim Meish Alperovich. So he told me, he said when he would Farbrengen Sukkos or other times, no, not Farbrengen even, he'd come into the Sukkah or come in when they were Farbrengen, he says big chassidim, people who were really maskilim and aivdim, they'd all be bottled before him. And it wasn't because he spoke better than them and he knew more than them, because he had such a bittul and such a anova and such a truth to him that people right away saw this is like the real thing. So even if you're a Bal Madregi, you feel that I'm not it. Going back to what I began, I was saying was that when you learn Chassidus, obviously if you can get a taste for Elokus, that's Gavaldik. But even if you don't get a taste completely, but you know at least what it's not, that's also a big thing. Because it becomes like, then the hold of Elam Hazeh gets a little weaker. But when you're living in this world, what else is holding on to you? You don't have any alternative. So when the Rabbeim gave us Chassidus, they gave us a picture of a different reality. And when you have some taste of that, your reality becomes, it's not as good as it could be. Even though you may not know the nigun, but the nigun you're playing is not complete. Now, of course, there's a lot more to say. The reason I'm saying this is because I said earlier about the Bochrim, Mashiach, Geulah. Chassidus is not a sideshow here. Hei Teves is about living with the Rebbe, living with the Rebbe's Torah. The Rebbe's Torah is primarily Chassidus, Divrei Elokim Chaim. Not just Divrei Elokim Chaim, living. And it's not an aside. The Rebbe's main mission to us right now is Der Ashvi. He said clearly, Lahavi Ashchina, Lamata, Ikar Ashchina, and Dafke B'Tachtein. And everyone wants to know how to do that. No way you can do that if you don't have any musig. If you think of Elam Hazeh as the beginning and end, you're not doing anything. You have a sense that there's something more. And that's the big challenge. Because what I'm saying now, I know some people say it's too over my head, too askoladik, too much learning for me. I did my learning already, I'm already 23. I'm not zitzflesh. I'm not busy, I'm an activist. Or I'm selling fluorescent bulbs on Amazon or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if you take the Rebbe seriously, you have to believe in the product. You can't sell something you don't believe in. And I think that people don't know what the product of Mashiach is, and they definitely don't know how to articulate it. So that's what I'm trying to do, is a little articulation. I'm not suggesting I know better than everybody, but it's something I seek to try to master. Let's put it that way. Because that's the end of the day. If you want to convey anything to people, you have to convey something from the hechere Welt. Now, it could take the shape of that looks like self-help or psychology, but the bottom line is you want to lift them up from where they are to a more refined place. And you can only do that if you have some taste in that refinement. There's no way you can do it without that. So someone will say, 1 second, the Rebbe said mitzvah to him, put on tefillin on him, eat be kosher, keep Shabbos. Obviously that is critical because that's Meiser Iker. But when you can articulate in a way that shows a person that even his nefesh habamis is lifted up, that changes the whole picture. And I have no question in my mind. The Rebbe said the Welt is great. That's the Rebbe's statement, not mine, not yours. When people tell me they don't know what Welt the Rebbe is talking about, I find that to be very disturbing. That's what the Rebbe said. He knew the Welt. That means people are receptive to this. And if you want to create a revolution, it has to be in that way. How to articulate, how to actualize, how to live with Chassidus. And it's not a skula. You have that, you b'meila have Mashiach. Because Chassidus is Mashiach. It's the Geulah Elokus be'elam hazeh in every particular thing. I have a few stories I want to tell about this, but let's say l'chaim. And may we do this. Since it's my birthday, I could say this. My shver, Olav Shalom, Hesker Gansberg, went to Yechidus by the Rebbe, Tafshin Yud Aleph, Chav Zayin Elul. Was his birthday, Tafshin Yud Aleph. And the Rebbe told him that you prepared the maamar for Rosh Hashanah this year. Because the Rebbe was giving out the maamar from the Frierdiker Rebbe. So Gates a mail and zog them shver. So he should give you a bracha for the new year. So my shver, he didn't say words, but he made with his head like this and that he's standing by the Rebbe. What was the Rebbe sending him to the Rebbe? So the Rebbe sensed what he was meant. So the Rebbe said to him, Gei dorten und rei dorten wie der redst da. Go there, speak there like you're speaking here. And then the Rebbe said, this is the bracha I want to say. The Eibishter soll helfen, als Teil von den Inyanim, was der Rebbe gewollt ist für in der Welt, soll sich es werden durch dir. I give you a bracha to each of us, myself as well. That tail, part of the things that Rebbe wanted to accomplish in this world, should be accomplished through you. Tell me if there's a better bracha than that. If you live up to that, kol hakavod. Chaim, chaim. I'll get the ganze Kugel.
Let's do a round two. Somebody's reason.
She knows, okay? Think she'll end up coming here? You think my mother's going to come here?
I could see it every day.
Very good, Shmuel. L'chaim, l'chaim.
All these also 18 hours.
He's under 40.
When I heard the sikha that Shmuley, that you forwarded me the clip from Yutzvat to Zion. Yeah. It reminded me that I remember was in the sukkah 10 years ago, maybe more than 10. It was on New York Avenue, so Zalman Posen, all of us, Shalom, was there. In the sukkah, and he told me some stories. He's from the old timers, from the shins. And he told me that he was once, the Frierdiker Rebbe called him in. He was a bocher, not even a bocher, I think he was a young teenager maybe. How much would he have been Tofshin Hei, Tofshin Vog? I don't know exactly. No, maybe he was a bocher. Frierdiker Rebbe sent him on a shlichus, and I think it was Chicago maybe. And the Frierdiker Rebbe sensed that he never went before in a shlichus, so he sensed he was apprehensive, which means he was like sure of himself. This is exactly how he told me the story. He said Frierdiker Rebbe spoke then, it was hard to understand. So there was always one maskir, sometimes the Rebbe, sometimes different maskirim. Yeah, that would be there in the room to translate for those that didn't understand. He said he understood most of the word, but Frierdiker Rebbe was very expressive with his hands, so it helped understand because the Rebbe would make his hands, so you got it like it was clearer easier to pick up. So Frierdiker Rebbe sensed that he was being like somewhat hesitant, apprehensive about this. So Frierdiker Rebbe said these words. This is what he told me. When you have to send a soul, the Eibishter wants to send a neshama down here below. Is the neshama will nicht gehen? The neshama doesn't want to go. Havas. Weil eben ist lichtig und warm, und unten ist kalt und finster. Above it's warm and bright, or bright and warm, and unten is dark and cold. So why would the neshama want to go from a warm, bright place to a dark, cold place? If was tutman, this is how he told me. He said, "Was tutman? What do you do?" Frierdiker Rebbe says, and he says this. He remembers this. Frierdiker Rebbe took his finger like this and said, "Mizog the neshama, mehez the neshama," and the Frierdiker Rebbe started going like Sarob Kain, all the mata, and the finger like started moving from the top down like this. It was like shaking a bit. He said, all the way lamata, Arab kommen lamata, und dort wo es kalt und finster soll man machen lichtig und warm. That's how he and Frierdiker Rebbe made like that, lichtig und warm. And of course he went on the shlichus. He says, I could tell you that the visualization of this helped me many times in my life when I had difficulties, when I had challenges. Later we moved to Nashville. So, everybody has ups and downs. There are times you really feel depressed, you feel down, you feel like you're not successful, things are not working. He says, I would always close my eyes, and I remember the finger of the Rebbe, Frierdiker Rebbe. And I felt like I was traveling with the Frierdiker Rebbe's finger from the highest place down with the kavon, and it gave me strength. It's a... Huh?
It sounded.
Yeah. So when I heard this the clip, the Rebbe cries, it says, so you could feel, it's a nice geschmack, like today, pninim, as they call it, pirsum rishon, nodir, the new thing, nodir, xaviad nodir or something. They have all kinds of new names. Breaking news. Everything is breaking news. When you say breaking news too many times a day, it takes away from the... Breaking news happens once in your lifetime. Breaking news. So when you think about it, that a Rebbe is not just saying words, that every tenu, every movement, and like in a way, if you can live with that, connect to it, you're actually going eben. And then you're going unten. And then you have the kav of Yerushalayim that connects. You all know, of course, Sukkos Nun Beis. The first day of Sukkos, I'm sauntering into 770, my good old, around 11 o'clock. And I see there's the lines. I didn't know what's happening. Then in a few minutes, quickly you figure out that Rebbe is standing in the sukkah, watching everybody bench lulav and esrog. And then you get the story, 8 o'clock in the morning, when the Rebbe gave lulav and esrog, he followed into the sukkah. So no one knew what was going on. The Rebbe would stand 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And the Rebbe started standing there all day. When did it end? Like 3:15? Something like that. And that's when they daven shachris, and right afterwards mincha. It was a scene. Shachris Musa v'lemen, yeah. But the Rebbe stood, and I remember it was oyim v'neira. It was not the regular. The Rebbe was like looking, had that look. It's almost like the picture of the Alter Rebbe look, like hecher. Huh? Yeah. And we all went by, like a bunch of whatever. We did what we had to do, and the Rebbe cooked. But I remember afterwards, I went down 770. I remember who it was. Some Chassidus. And I said, "What's going on? What do you think this is?" He just as he says, cooking Ramban in Parshas Bamidbar. Ramban Parshas Bamidbar. So I opened it up. What does it say there? So Rashi says, Lama mein esei. When you love something, you're always counting it. So frag the Ramban, what does counting have to do with love? He says, because when you count, you have to look at it. You have to look at each one. And that's what love is. The looking at each one. Anyway, I registered. Again, we didn't know what was coming in Nun Beis. Obviously, with Chav Zayin Oder coming, you had a whole different look. What the Rebbe was doing, this last look, wanted to see the Chassidim. We can't touch him in Mevil, but it was definitely. But then working in the Sichos, one of the themes that Rebbe talks about is Moshe cooked Eretz Yisrael. So you have Moshe is Mispal Tov Kuf Tezvav Tfilis. He wants to go into Eretz Yisrael. The Eibishter tells him, "That's it. Stop asking. It's not happening." And then what happens? Some consolation. What does the Eibishter do? Geir Rufa from Bagdad sends him up on the mountain and look at it. And right away the question is, what's this? The Moshe is interested in a sightseeing tour. He wants to go into Eretz Yisrael because Eretz Yisrael is Eretz Yisrael and mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael and all the reasons. So the Ragat Shover explains, the Rebbe brings this, that when a tzaddik, a Moshe looks at something, it changes the reality. And it actually says, Liyashir es haderech. Moshe looking at Eretz Yisrael was helping the Eden to be Kevish Eretz Yisrael in the future. Just Agav, the Rebbe said in Tavshel Chov Zayin, Yud Beis Tammuz, that the Frierdiker Rebbe going out of prison, Yud Beis Tammuz helped win the Muhammad Sheshes Hayom. He explains why, but a tzaddik is not such a simple thing. You go through something today, it affects people forever. So I can't help but wonder, the Rebbe was giving a cake. He wasn't just looking at the Chassidim and saying goodbye, or looking at the Chassidim to give to see would they help in the neshama. That maybe was a look, like the Chassidim used to say, "Kukav di eigen was gesehen Rebbe." I may be nobody, but the eigen gesehen Rebbe. It's not stam avort. It means I saw something of a different reality. So I may be not living up to it, but I'm a witness. Frierdiker Rebbe said in the beginning of his Nesius, he had typhus, he had fever, high fever, and he was when you have fever, you have fever. So there was a chassid, maybe a chassid sheita, whatever you want to call him, who said the Rebbe read von hitz, because the Frierdiker Rebbe said things, so like delirious. He read von hitz, the Rebbe read von hitz, read von hitz. Now he was from the Rebbe Rashab's Chassidim, so he was not Frierdiker Rebbe. When he came back, he heard it. He told him, he says, Meile the rest of mir, aber dem Taten Zazun. Now you're talking about me, fine, but the Taten Zazun, how could you speak like that? So, Gvaiste Sinjgun has a full hits. The Ragachov then wrote an answer, wrote to Chassidim to console them. He said the Rebbe went over from being a chassid to a Rebbe, from Azun to a Rebbe. So in Hapi Halacha, the way to become a new Metzias, you have to have libun. You have to have a high heat. They translated the high fever of the Rebbe, Frierdiker Rebbe, as being a shinei hachefza, shinei from a Azun to Zayin Rebbe. Anyway, aside. So when we listen today, and there's no question it's Bashgacha Plutz that we have hundreds of hours of the Farbrengen, and we can the videos. So I'm not talking about the chitzenius of it, to see that all of this is meant for us to be able to have a taste of the Rebbe in the fullest sense of the word, and we have it with us. And because the Rebbe looked at us, and even though the Rebbe, many of you in the room weren't even born, but the Rebbe once said, since there's some people in this generation that saw a Rebbe, that already, in a way, transfers to everybody. The Rebbe said that when the first Bachrim went to Australia, Tovshin Chav Zayin as well. So other time, before Pesach. So the first Kfutza, 6 Bachrim were chosen to go to Australia. It was a big thing then. I was a kid, I just remember it was like a big move. How old was I? I was 10 years old. Yeah, I just remember one of them was my uncle. Hilshel Lipsker was Shlomo Zachi went. Shlomo Zesk, I'm sorry, not my mistake. Minkowitz, Label Kaplan, and Avram Oltan. Yeah.
Hirschel
Marozov. Yeah. So the Rebbe made a big thing with Farbrengens and so on. There's a Mouthpiece Farbrengen. You should check it out. I think it's Tetzave Chav Zayin. And the Rebbe said like this, that in the time of the Mittler Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe sent some of his Chassidim to Eretz Yisrael. He also sent his daughter, Rebbe Menucha, who married Slonim. The Chassidim, some of them didn't want to go. And the Mittler Rebbe said, why do they want to go? Because they don't want to miss the Maimorim from the Mittler Rebbe. So Mittler Rebbe made Haftacha that he's going to send Maimorim specially to them. And that's why in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim, in the archives, in the library, there's a lot of Ksavim from Mittler Rebbe. Because he did, as he said, he sent manuscripts of Maimorim that the Chassidim in Russia didn't even see. He sent direct handwritten original Maimorim to Chevron or wherever they were, Yerushalayim. So the Rebbe asked a question. Okay, so the Chassidim was a shtikl nechama, so they have the Ksavim from the Mittler Rebbe. But what bothered them was not just the Ksavim. They want to see the Rebbe. So the Rebbe brought them from a maamar from Tzemach Tzedek, a thing called Sfichim, halacha, that there are things you plant that right now they don't sprout, they sprout 3 years later. So the shaila is when starts Truma and Meiser. Do you count from when they sprout, from when they were planted? Bottom line, the Rebbe said what we call today a delay reaction. The Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe was saying that when you'll have my Ksovim, And since you see me now, you'll have me, not just the writings, but you'll see my face as well. Because I'm planting it in you that you'll be with you all the time. That's what the Rebbe said. He said to the Bachim in Australia that when you go to Australia, they're going to be in a place they don't see the Rebbe. But the Rebbe is giving them that kayach, that they will see him in a certain Mouthpiece way. That's what the Rebbe said. It's an interesting sikh. You have to read it. It's very. I don't know if I'm even conveying it and giving it full justice, but it's a very interesting because the Rebbe was saying. So the Rebbe said then, "The Baal Mizat Rebbe Meimol." That seeing is always with you. And he spoke then about the Frierdiker Rebbe. Asidah Zachi said here that saw the Frierdiker Rebbe. There are many that didn't, but because there are people here that did see, it goes for the whole dar. Bottom line, my friends, is what I want to say is this. We have only two alternatives. Either all this is a story from the past, and it's nice nostalgia. I'm just saying it's time for the Beshuftin Askina. And like they said, nostalgia is not like what it used to be. Deja vu all over again. Yeah, deja vu all over again. Yeah. The same guy that said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. I don't want to say B'Shem Emre. B'Shem Emre is when Moshe Grona would say, Simchas Torah Yud Gimel. When Yogi Berra quote from the Yankees, that's Simchas Torah that Rebbe get danced. All but in one mishpat, in one sentence. Yogi Berra quote for the Yankees that Rebbe get danced. I said, you sure it was Yogi? Yeah. In Brooklyn, and Ebbetsfield. Yet the Mr. Grona was a certain interesting personality. Al Kaponim, obviously that's not the choice. The other choice is this. Now we'll never understand Gimel Tammuz, but one thing is for sure, the Rebbe lives on. But in this time it's up to us. So this story with the Mitla Rebbe, the Rebbe looking at us all, that's Sukkos. There's no question it's an Asinis Keach. And at the end of the day, there's the famous story, who's it, with Kussi Lepler, or was Yom Kletzker, that he had a Yetzer Hara thought in Peterburg. And what did he say to himself? Vi pastes v'achosid von Rebbe Satana Zazach. And that's what stopped him. It's interesting. He didn't say the Torah Zok Nish. Vi pastes, because people are going to see me, and I'm a reflection. People think I'm a chassid of the Rebbe, whether I am or not. People think I am. So vi pastes, I could be such a behavior. I can tell you clearly, it affects me, these things, all the time, because people say, chesed for Rebbe, mamania. So you can't get away with certain things. What's coming on? You can't give in to all your types, right? And don't start asking me what Averis I have under my this. It's not time for confession. Jews don't confess anyway. Only once a year. You keep. So, my Hei Teves is about the nitzchis of a Rebbe, living on through his Torah, living on through us. It's as simple as that. And that in that way, in many ways, it's much higher than any Chag HaGeulah before. Yud Kislev, we're not taking away Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus. Alter Rebbe comes out of prison, it's a vindication now. Chassidus can now spread. So it's no question a step toward Geulah v'chul. Yud Beis Tammuz has its miles. Tes Kislev, Yud Kislev. But the nitzchis, that in a court of law should be established, that something lives on, that is its own power. It's a very Mouthpiece thing. It's actually much more complicated to explain. Yud Kislev is not that hard to explain. Hei Teves, you have to get into when the Rebbe lives, through the Sfarim, through Chassidim, the Rebbe belongs to Chassidim. What does this mean? But the Ma'aseh B'Peil, it simply means this: we are, whether we like it or not, the arms and legs, like the Rebbe said, Gimel Shvat Tovshin Nun Beis, Klora de Purim, 6 weeks before the stroke. That when the Rebbe has a stroke, we have to be the Ar Nachicha. We are the mouth. We're the mouthpiece. That we have to use our mouths to chazah what the Rebbe said. So, There's still 7.5 billion people to reach. I know it's not a lot in the scheme of things, but I know it comes sometimes to 770. I mention it. Motelchen, a few others always say to me, "Kevers given the Welt, du weißt doch, du gehst doch mit um, alles Kevers given." So I say, "What about the Chinezer?" So he says to me, "Welche Chinezer?" I said, 1.9 billion Chinezer, or 1.8. So dat is heel veel. Zeg, biljoen? Het is een miljoen. I said, biljoen. Chinezer, wat is de Chinezer? You know. So I said, the Indianer, what about the Indian? How many are there? I said, 1.7 billion. So I said, okay, do you was mit roof the customer service for Dell? Computers, you know. I think they drive Uber, you know. So I say, yeah, so you just suddenly dismissed half the world. I'm not saying it mitzad that we're going to shtuv gitam. But se da Welt's a bissl größer, se nicht nur was Shmuel the Schneider and Yitzchak Churgen, whoever, they were learning the Kutei Torah, Bavusta Mais, everyone knows the story. It says that Shnei Shlisha Elam is Yam and Ein Shlish is Yabosha, and they look at each other and they say, ich guck, you know Yabosha, wo soll ich da, ja? Ergens wo. She said, the Alter Rebbe sagt, darf man so nehmen Kabbalah sale, you know. I remember when the Iraq, when Saddam Hussein was shooting Scots to Israel, remember that Kufa? And the Rebbe says it came with Shatten. And then one guy got killed, he had a heart attack. So I remember Farbrengen, label Groner, und die Bod L'chaim, and Itcher Springer. It was in 770, and someone Bocher asked me who the Rebbe gesagt had gone to Shatten, I mentioned gestorben. So label said, nicht direct from the Scot, it was a shock, it was not direct. And Itcher Springer said, wenn man glaubst, der Rebbe zu der Radio. That's what he said. Gewaldig, right? So I remember I said to myself, that's one straight, Yehuda Tato and Yehuda Ilah. Yehuda Tato, you come explain, the Scot didn't hit him, it was a heart attack, it was a Mesubav. And he said, wenn man glaubst. My grandfather, Yankel Lipsker, of fame of the Kakarot Alakan and the other Pizgomim Keilu. And someone recently told me, said, Asher Teves from Hashem HaParsha, Vayikra, Val Yeder Kakar Hot Alakan. So if you need a drosha for Vayikra, you can use that. He has a few other interessante Pizgomim. So my grandfather my father was a journalist, a writer. My grandfather always was dismissive. Schreibers, Baba Meises, Salz Fantasias, Baba Meises. Now, he respected my father, but still he had a Lipsker need to, as a reinstechen a bisschen. And he used to always tell me, alles versteht nach Zeitung ist a liegen. Everything is a lie. So I said, Zayda, das ist nicht Russland, it's America. It's nicht Pravda. You know? He says, alles ist a liegen. Das ist I feel the datum, I feel the tarikh is a liegen. It is gedruckt a Nacht früher. So even the date in newspapers are a lie, because they printed it the night before. They write the next day. They print whatever, January 2, they print on January 1. As I got a little older, I think he has a good point. You know, fake news, whatever you want to call it. Pravda, you know what the word Pravda means? Emes. In Russian, Pravda means truth. Would you trust a newspaper that has the deadline, the truth? You know? And then in Russia, by the way, the communist Jewish Yiddish newspaper, you know what it was called? Emes. You know how it was spelled? Ayin Mem Ayin Samach. I'm not exaggerating, but it's not about. I'm not making just. I used to think that maybe Ayin Mem Ayin Samach, even the word is not spelled emes. The emes is spelled like Noach with Zibn Greisen. So I thought maybe the Jewish editor, he was obviously under their control, but he wanted to send in that emes that don't think this is emes. So he just, you know, it's like if I have to send that emes to you and you don't know, I just misspelled the whole word, so you know the whole thing is sheker. Maybe. So whenever you have a bureau, I think Chacham Bola'ir, there's suddenly a light has entered into this room. That was going to zog. So, whenever you know, whenever you hear that somebody has to,
You're on camera now.
Whenever you hear somebody establish a bureau of truth and information, you can know it's not true and it's not information. That's how it is. So, we live in a Alma de Shikra, and at the end of the day, the schus we have is that they had a little taste of emes. My great-grandfather, Gershon Ben Paharer, Yichus. I'm not just a tzuggikum, I also have another side to me.
We accept everyone.
There you go. So he said when they asked him what does he look forward to once he leaves this world, he says, that means ensign abis lemes. Because the fact of the matter is, it's not like we're outright liars. Not everyone's a liar. There are liars. There are pathological liars. You know what the word pathological means? I'm giving you a few words to look up later. You can look it up. Professor Rabbi Google will solve all your problems. But even when you don't lie, you're lying. We live in a world of lies. Duplicity is called. I mentioned before stabbing someone in the back. You smile to them and then you stab them in the back. Echad b'peh, echad b'lev. Because we live in a world. I always think to myself, to me, always you look at children. Children are the purest thing. In technology, a phone number, let's say version iPhone 10 is better than iPhone 9. In human beings, version 1 is better than version 2. So the best yeshiva you can ever have is what was Mimei Imei, in your mother's womb. After that is downhill. I graduated through them, I can tell you that, no question about it. I'm sure you can agree. So children is really, if you want to see the best version of yourself, look at yourself as a child. Does a child lie on its own? Think about this question. When does a child lie for the first time? Children don't lie. That's why parents have to always tell children, don't tell everybody what's going on here. Because children are seamless. Why should a child lie? Something happens, I tell you. Well, you know when we learn to lie? The first time we see our parents lie. So we see, it's an option. So it's interesting because the concept of a sheker is not just you lying. You live in a world of what's like what's called a duality. What you see is not what you get. Everything's that way. Someone comes and sells you something, they package something, you get the most beautiful package, you open it up, it's a shmata. And you could sell, how much you can sell through packaging that's mamish worthless? I'm not saying everything worthless, everything packaged nicely is worthless, but there's so much worthless. That's the world in which we live. I remember in the year 2020, 20 years ago, was the new millennium, 2000. So there was all these articles, magazines, and so on about the second millennium. And I remember they listed, and a lot of people listed the top 100 people in the last 1,000 years, from the year 1000 to the year 2000. I'll tell you what struck me. I looked through the list, and I said to myself, if you asked a Fruma Eid, Chassidus Shid, make me a list of the 100 greatest people in the last, it would be completely two different lists. There's not one overlap. There was not one overlap. The greatest Jews in that list is Albert Einstein, Bob Dylan, Marx, Freud, and Al Derech Zeh. You make a list of 100, who would be the 100? It would be Rashi would be in it, the Rambam, the Rosh, the Arizal, the Baal Shem Tov, whatever. Yeah, that's what I mean. And I said to myself, we live in two different worlds. We don't even agree on who the top people are. And the Goyish world would say, you're living in illusions. You create yourself 100 Gedalim, we don't even know their names. And we would say, what are you talking about? These are the people that changed the world. So who's right? So we have our answer. It's a pretty good answer. If you're a skeptic, you could probably challenge it, but famous story with the Magi, they say about the Beis Yosef, a lot of stories. That what? They were once teaching a Torah, and the students were mamish bespilus, unbelievable chiddush, nifla. And then they went off back home, and one of them was in a Pashta Beis Medrash, and he sees they're learning a daf, they're learning a Gemara, that Gemara. And this Pashat Magid Shir is saying the chiddush the Magid said. So he went back to the Magid and said, what's going on? Instead, we just heard a chiddush nifla that never were heard before, Geinim. So he said, the Bubus answer, beautiful answer, that when you open up a Tziner Chodesh, Mamshir Ba'avre Elam, an idea, then everybody makes it easier for everybody to hear this, to come up with this idea. So that's our answer. That we who innovated every good ideal in this world. Avram Avinu is the father of all chesed. Long before, when the world was a pagan world, a selfish world, busy with zich, he came and introduced chesed into the world. Unbelievable. And it took a few thousand years for the world to catch up. So he was mamshech b'avrei elam. So it's not unheard of that we could have Geulah who they were not. Arizal was interested in being on the top, the time 100. I mean, there was no time then, but you did get the idea. But he's gelegen in the Zach. But I have no question the innovations that they made opened the door. This is what we. If there was no Giluyim Chadoshim in Torah, there wouldn't have been Giluyim Chadoshim in technology, in science. Why am I saying it? Because the fact of the matter is, the Rebbe says the Welt is great, and many people think, well, the Welt doesn't respect who we think are important people. Even the Rebbe himself. I mean, I made it part of my mission in life to try to be mefasim in the Rebbe as much as can in the world. It's very hard. It's very difficult. I'll tell you an interesting story. I said it by a regional kinnis in the Northeast a few years ago. They asked me to speak there. It was very shocking in a way, but it's a good to hear. So I said to them, Newsweek or Time magazine, these are big magazines. Today they're not as what they once were, but they were the biggest magazines in this country. The editor-in-chief of Newsweek, I knew. His name was John Meacham. Still around. He's a big guy. I knew him because he was once a religion editor, and he interviewed me, so I became friendly with him. No. The Nish Bala Bechira is a Sach Leichter with the Bala Bechira, I can tell you that. Him and his boss was Kenneth Woodward. Both Nishdiden, but they knew Chassidus, and they learned with Abraham Joshua Heschel. They knew their stuff. And they were Maminim. They would tell me, they told me both, that the Jewish editors are the worst ones. They completely don't believe. Because they magazines 6-7 times a year, they do specials on religion. Like spirituality in America, faith, does prayer heal, because that's, so every time they want to do such a cover story, is the Jews in either New York or in Los Angeles that say, what are you bringing primitive beliefs to the mainstream America? And Kenneth Woodward told me, he said to me, he always says, what primitive beliefs? Do you think the whole United States is New York and the West Coast and the East Coast? There's a big country in between. They're all believers. And he said, we'll prove it. We'll make a survey. How many Americans believe in miracles? And the Jews said, only the fools, so it's going to be 10%. 95% of Americans believe in miracles in one way or another. But it's the Jews that always made it. That was not the point I want to make. It's Derech Haga. So these guys are actually very good guys because they were believers. So there was an article, a big main story called Spirituality in America, and they had covered Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, and Jewish. And who was the Jewish representative? Zalman Schachter. Nice. Okay. So I wrote John Meacham an email. I wrote, between you and me, I'm not criticizing you, but you know that today spirituality in Judaism is Chassidus, Chabad Chassidus. So why don't you have someone from a Chabad Chassidic? He wrote to me, he's a very nice guy, sweetest guy, but he's a sharp guy. He writes back to me, and I read this to the Shluchim, it was like the largest group of Shluchim, by the way, in one place is Northeast. I'm talking about Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey. He writes back to me these words. He says, you and I know that Chassidus Chabad is Jewish spirituality, but no one else in the world does. And it's not my job to do your job. The Rabbi Rebbe, this is his words, is a genius in social science. He transformed the social world of Judaism, that wherever you go there's a Chabad house, you have a warm meal, you're accepted, non-judgmental, you have a Shabbat. I mean, he knows what's going on. He says, but he's not seen as an intellectual giant. He's not seen as a person who's changed the way people think. That's your job to do. When you do your job, and America accepts that, I'll do my job as an editor of Newsweek and publicize it. I said this to the Shluch. And of course, nobody in the Lubavitcher likes to hear that. because it's like 1 second. What do you mean? The Rebbe is the giant and everything. I wasn't saying Chaz v'Shalom because I don't believe that. But he said, you didn't do your job. And I'm not going to do it for you. I'm not your PR guy. I'm not your marketer. I'm not your... And he was right, 100% right. He can't make the Rebbe number one if the Rebbe is not number one in the world. I was mamish hurt in a way, but it was like such a wake-up call when I heard it from him. I said, yeah, exactly right. We talking Molor is Deus Hashem. Yeah, Mamayla Lamata, we know Mamayla Lamata can arbet in Torah, the Mamshech Elokus Mamayla Lamata. But Mamata Lamayla, Das Tacht, that the world recognizes. You think that anyone makes a list of 100 greatest thinkers of this generation? They're going to put the Rebbe on it? Newsweek, Time, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and not because anti-Semitism. You know what they'll put on? Maybe Steinsaltz, actually. I'm saying it jokingly, but it's. I was once in the Tzemach Tzedek Shul. You know, he's a Letz, and he's always making fun of everybody except himself. So I had one. I know him. I'm friendly. He says to me, "How are you doing? You know the Jacobsons. You're noisemakers, right? You're noisemakers. You're doing noisemakers." I said, "I'm a noisemaker. You're the noisemaker." Time magazine said, "A mind like this doesn't come in 1,000 years, like your mind." So I don't know if you told it to them, but you definitely didn't deny it. Huh? I said, not the Rebbe, not the Arizal, not the Baal Shem Tov, not the Steinsaltz. So you're the man. I wish I could make such noise like you. A mind like that in 1,000. Anyway, that's Agav. You should be healthy and well. But you know, sometimes you get what you dish out. But I said, but to me, I'm telling you this without even us. Mamayla can Eibush to Tom Vasevil. He can bring Mashiach in a second. I don't think we have much say in that matter. God does it, great. I wish it happens right now, and we'll go to sleep, actually. But we're getting tired. But Mitzad Das Tachten, don't convince yourself that the Rebbe is number one and Chassidus is number one in the world. It's not yet the bestseller on earth. It's far from there. The Bible, yeah. Bible is stuck in the most selling book. So you'll say to me, well, you're not authors, you're not writers, what could you do? The Rebbe didn't say that. He said every one of us, he never made any exception, every one of us is carriers of the message. So who are we talking to? To the same audience? Same bubble? The Rebbe said, but I remember Shev Mitzvah Nech, you go to work, you talk to them about business, talk to them about God. And I'm telling you, most people, even in Chabad, who are complete Chassidish Yidden, they don't know how to eat that. I had a guy came to me, a Lubavitcher guy, says, I'm on a plane. If I'm sitting near a Jew, I'll talk to him about tefillin, I'll put on tefillin or something. But I'm sitting near a guy, what should I tell him? He should taste my kosher meal. This is like dog food. I said, trust me, the non-kosher is also probably like dog food. I never tasted it, but it doesn't look much better. So I said to him, what do you mean? The Rebbe said, talk to him about God. He says, what am I supposed to tell him? I said, what, are you kidding me or something? Like, you know, and then he tells me, Akum Shalom Atera Chayiv Misa. He's afraid he's going to cause him to die. Because if he says something wrong, I'm not exaggerating. So I realized that we're like really behind, the Rebbe is like 30 years ahead of our time. And I think everyone here can do something about it. Hei Teves is about the nitzchis of the Rebbe through Svarim, through Chassidus, and through us. But it's a triple thing. Take out one of those three, and it falls apart. You have to have the Rebbe, obviously. You have to have the Chassidus, and you have to have us, because we're the carriers. We're the mouthpiece. We're the arms and legs. So, to me, that's the practical takeaway. And to pat ourselves in the back and say we've done so much and so much, that's nice, and I'm not taking away. Trust me. Mesiras Nefesh of Shluchim, Shluchis, I've seen it with my own eyes. I think people trying their best, but you know, the best may not always be enough. You have to do more. And the Rebbe knew it quite well, and the Rebbe appreciated it. You know, many people say the Rebbe didn't voice appreciation as much as he voiced his demands. I never saw it that way. I saw the Rebbe as loving, but the Rebbe, when you love someone, you want the best. You don't just want mediocre. You don't just want half. You know, lahavdil, when you look at a tennis coach, and he's kicking the butt of a champion, he's so what do you want? The guy's already winning games, but he wants the best. And when you want the best for someone, you love them, you push them. You know, I mean, that was the Rebbe's attitude. Story with Rabbi Hecht, for example, New Haven. I remember. So the Rebbe wanted him to start a school, Okay, fine. It's not so easy. So he started working, building, blah, blah, blah. Every time he'd write to the Rebbe, Vu Haltman. The Rebbe doesn't forget, Vu Haltman. So I remember once by Farbrengen, and I asked him, he said, I'd be honest, I stopped writing to the Rebbe. Every time, it's always about the school, no matter what I do, back to the school. So then finally he got it done. But he knew he can't just tell the Rebbe he built a school. You have to have kids in the school. The Rebbe will never go for a school without children. So he got that too. He had it all lined up. He said he couldn't drive fast enough from New Haven to New York. He's coming to tell the Rebbe. But someone in the Lameds, late Lameds maybe early Lameds. He comes, Minche Davens, he's in Gan Eden Atachten. He's going to tell the Rebbe. The Rebbe comes out from Minche, going to his room. Moshe Hecht, he's so excited because he finally can, he can write. He can face the Rebbe. By Farbrengen, he told me he'd say L'chaim, but then he'd right away like hi, because the Rebbe would start making like this, and then he understood what that meant. That means, it's not. I'm not just giving you L'chaim's. The Rebbe said. The Rebbe Rashab said, "Meine shirayim zayin mechayiv." When Apel Shel Chassid was schlepping shirayim, so the Rebbe Rashab said, "Meine shirayim zayin nish mezakeh zayin mechayiv." Means it's not just a merit for you. It compels you to do something. So he's standing by the door, and he says to the Rebbe, Hei Teves, the school is built. We have 200 children, whatever the number was. The Rebbe right away saw his simcha, Geulah, and the Rebbe, of course, in his classic style, says to him, Ramesha, weiß doch, als mir wirst du keinlich zufriedenstellen. You know that me you're never going to make happy. So I said, so how do you feel? He says, I actually felt good, because I realized that it doesn't matter. I should still contact the Rebbe. Whatever I do, he's going to want more. And so I might as well be there. I'm not going to have to hide. Now, you think about it, it's not like, you could say, once the Rebbe's a little rachmanis, you built a school already. So let the guy have a little joy for a day. Tomorrow you start demanding. Like he told Ronnie Perlman, he said, I have $14.5 million, $1 for every Jew. So the Rebbe said, it's already been good news. It's already been spent. I'm waiting for the next installment. You see this constantly with the UJA. All these. It's no question. The Rebbe. It's not coming because a person's not able to say, God forbid, thank you, and appreciate. It's because the Rebbe wanted it all, and it's a vote of confidence. And you have to be mature. To be honest, I remember when working in the Sichas, we used to get chalokim. Trust me. The Rebbe would give sometimes sharp chalokim. And it was not always easy. You have to have thick skin. And I remember one guy working with us, he was a young bacher, but he was very talented. He's a big shliach now, I don't want to say his name. And he was a good mind, and I was like training him in. And he, like, after Chazorah, he'd see how brutal we were. We'd argue, and then he saw one note from the Rebbe. He says, oh, do me a favor. I have my skin, my ego is too fragile for this. I said, this is love. The Rebbe's the deepest love is if he can tell you a critique. It was like meididik. But you have to appreciate that. And you have to be mature. I remember, you want to hear a good one? I'm not mafasim this so much. And thank God I was not the one that was the culprit here. So, we prepared a sikha. It was, I think, a Hei Teves Mem Daled. And I think it was Mem Daled. About Binyamin Zev Yitref. Was it Mem Daled? Yeah, I think so. And it was a very beautiful sikha. It was prepared, but it was prepared quickly. The one who wrote it, he just did a very quick job. So it was accurate, this. So the Rebbe was magiyat from beginning to end, but then on top, what a chelik. I think that was the sharpest I ever saw. The Rebbe writes, I'm trying to remember all the things. The sharpest line was, La'achri kol halatis, yena ezen hatis. That's what the Rebbe wrote. You know what that means? Like, in other words, it's like a torn garment, and after all the latis is patches. You're making the garment, yena ezen hatis. It still looks like it's horrible. It means after all the patches that ever made, yenas and zayin. I remember we asked, should we print it, not print it? So the Rebbe just could not deal with the fact that it was written in such a sloppy way, and it was a mistake on our part. No, it was not. But the point I want to make is that when the Rebbe gave us this job and said tut alzvus ekent, it wasn't chaz v'shalom to say, like some people think, what the Rebbe's giving us the job, it's his job. No, the Rebbe is giving us the keach. I remember even when he said the Chav Ches Nissen, it was not even a Havamina. The Rebbe is not Chaz v'Shalom quitting and giving us the job. It's ridiculous. He's saying, I'm giving you the keach to do something that you have to do. That's the word, for sure. The Rebbe knows he's a Rebbe, he's the Nasi. No one replaces that. Now, but then, the Nasi needs the Shutfus or the Shtatfus or the Pa'ula Ktana, Etzbe Ktana, whatever it may be. So, how do we go away with Achlotas Teves here in this regard? That's what I want to know. You could talk and talk, and how does it come down to Achlotas? We bring this lepeil. Eenmaal voor allemaal. L'chaim. Nu welke Chassidische nigun kan teven zijn de $1 million question?
What I wanted to take before. It's so gave to us. You always want to like negate.
Amen. I'm a vada from his vada. Chaim.
Yeah.
And what's the point of that?
How you doing, Levi?
I'm doing my best.
You bring a Mashiach, huh?
Someone, it's a mutual friend of ours. He asked me if I had shir right the week. I go to a Tanya shir by Levi. And then I wanted to say as if I go to other shir as well. So I said that Levi has another shir throughout the week. And it's not sure what it is. And he's like, Mistam's a Mashiach shir. Because I'm very into Mashiach. And it's like, yeah, it actually is. He's a Mashiach fanatic. That's
it's on Daf Yomi, right? We're not for Daf Yomi. What's the real? What's the deal? Everyone makes up. It's always patches.
I've spoken about it a few times in my life. There's letters from the Rebbe. There's documents, not theories. It's not a takona like Kitas. It's not a takona of a Rebbe. But the Rebbe, it's learned theory. The Rebbe would never come out. The Rebbe has letters that. What did he say then? And then never spoke against. No, it's not a takona like Kitas. It's not a takona from the Rebbe. But the Rebbe has letters where he actually says a bracha to shoot him. The Rebbe would never come out against someone learning. But is that takona like a Rebbe should takona? No. The Rebbe had the prokim. That was the main thing. That's what he said. No. Learning, not supposed to learn prokim, which means the daf ends in the middle of a sentence. That was but that was not, the Rebbe didn't say you shouldn't do it. It was really not on the level of a takona of a Rebbe. That's how I would do it.
There's no problem.
If you someone learning daf, you stop learning.
People don't learn Rambam, but they learn Daf Yomi.
So that's, first of all, you have influence over them to do being negative is not usually the Teves.
I heard there was a guy in the car once up by the Rebbe and wanted to bottom like the Rebbe to make the scene. The Rebbe said, he told the Rebbe again, it happened 3 times. I heard that. The Rebbe didn't hear it.
It's a weird story.
Right. So the Rebbe's not going to be sensitive. If someone's learning Daf Yomi, it would be a sin to tell them to stop. Why would you tell someone who's learning? Forget about the Baba.
Which specific
And let's say it's not a Chabad guy, a Veltish guy's learning. You tell him to stop learning Daf Yomi. So fine, he must be animal. Or why is it to learn both? Let's say he wants to learn both. Definitely good.
If the Lubavitcher wants to learn both, it's in. Or is it better so
if he wants to, forget about that. And what's a guy wants to learn Gemara? It's not Daf Yomi. Is he allowed to?
100%.
not article.
So Dafka, not Dafka. Let's say a guy's learning Gemara. It's not Daf Yomi. He's learning the next Daf.
Frierdiker Rebbe, the people who started, or wasn't the Frierdiker Rebbe against?
I don't against like not to do it. He told people not to learn it. I never heard that. I think again there was those that said because it's prokim. But 90,000 people come in to get the order. How could you say that's a bad thing? You want to not learn? The Rebbe once said that he gave tzedakah ta'id. He gave a tzedakah to someone at night. You know that one? He told the Frierdiker Rebbe, someone criticized the Rebbe. Giving tzedakah at night. You're not supposed to. So Frierdiker Rebbe said, "Mistama gitter batogech." I don't think Mistama gitter batogech. So you go and tell someone not to learn Daf Yomi. It sounds a little like, and that's the only thing he's learning. So I start wondering, are you telling him not to learn? What are you telling him?
I've heard of
it depends who you're talking to. If a Chassidus Shabbat comes to Mashpia and says,
the context that he brought it,
I'm learning Daf Yomi. Shalom Rambam. So obviously, the Rambam is takana from the Rebbe, etc. But there's a lot of Jews in this world. You know? I know personally thousands of Jews that learn it. So what it would be ridiculous that even if they smell the Havamina that year, that Chabad doesn't want them to learn Daf Yomi. What kind of impression with that? Anyway, the Rebbe wrote letters of encouragement, right? That's for sure. So there's no way that. But still, I think. Thank you. But I think still, at Takona of a Rebbe, it's not. That's fine. You know, others doesn't have that power. But learning is learning. I don't see a reason that we have to go around make a mitzvah not to learn that.
The Lubavitcher wants to learn. There is nothing.
That's my response. No, it won't make you less Lubavitcher. You actually become maybe more knowledgeable. I never heard that a Torah
the fact that the Rebbe didn't take it on does that show that
What does it show? The Rebbe also didn't take on other things done by the Misnagish world. So what? Doesn't mean it's not a good thing. The Rebbe did not make a mitzvah tzitzis. Let's say somebody goes ahead and makes tzitzis everywhere. You're going to say, no, it's not a good idea?
I never looked at what they had on base.
Why would you be negative? And again, there's letters of the Rebbe encouraging people to learn. So what do you say about that? Anyway, bottom line, you're asking me a question, or you just want me to say what you want me to say? I'm saying you like arguing. I'm telling you what I think. I told you my opinion. You can have a different opinion. The title is today.
I know concealment. I learned myself.
So in Jewish thought, instead of
I'm not sure what you mean. The brand? Jewish thought? You learn any sikhs, my mother?
I think he made a semen number of shtimal. I didn't realize I'm getting
Want me to answer that on 1 foot? It's a whole, the Rebbe has thousands of pages of teaching.
what's the impressive thing that like everyone will go?
And also what I realized
Different aspects on education.
many
Many things. I have a book called Meaning for Life. I have 31 chapters on it. That's all social. Some is philosophical. Some is educational. Not all. Some is personal. And many things. Marriage, personal life. I mean, it depends what area you're in.
You had an account of Zalman Shafter with your book, you know? You had a book signing with the editor, just to help out their
I did.
about being a spy.
About being a CIA, right? Yeah, like behind enemy lines. What's your name? Who's your father?
I saw he does it.
Oh, we've talked before, right?
Yeah, I think you came to us once for a tikva seminar. I wasn't there, but heard about it.
Yeah, you're here now?
I'm actually working in Baras. No, I'm working my parents' Baras. I'm working in my parents' Baras.
Yeah, I told that story. You heard it from your father? Yeah, it's a very good story.
You know how to look at yourself in a different way, and how to look at someone else in a different way.
Negatus.
And then he continues and explains how there was
Anyway, a lot of stories with him. I knew him. Anyway, I have in my life to supply. I talked about it 2 or 3 times. I brought all the letters of the Rebbe, all the hiros of the Rebbe, the positive, the negative. The conclusion is no question. There's no such thing as telling someone not to learn. That's not even a Havamim. You cannot see the Rebbe saying to someone not to learn Torah. That doesn't mean it's a taekwondo of chitas. I don't see the contradiction. This type of kanois not to learn, that doesn't make any sense to me. What's the chassidus? Someone wants to learn I'm telling you my understanding of the Rebbe is
Your wildest dream of everything about it. They would know why you went.
I'll just add, especially in our climate, if you showed me someone who's learning Torah every free moment of the day, and then he says, should I add Daf Yomi? It's one thing. Most of us are not learning, period. So we're going to talk to people about not learning. It's ridiculous. So it's like, I said, if you're learning all day, Chitas, Rambam, Chassidus, and you have no time, it's today. But if you're just wasting time anyway, it's better to do Dvarim B'Teil than to learn Daf Yomi, for example. Would you say that? No, I'm saying, would anyone say such a thing? That's like shtusim. You know, it's like. Anyway, there's a lot of levels of Chassidus. I don't know if that's the one I would begin with.
They spoke to that about that family once. Like wasn't.
I did a whole program on it. I mean, I did a few things.
So where do we find it?
You just do a search on Google, probably. It's right. My life, Daf Yomi. Yeah, you'll probably find it very quickly. I brought the different letters and so on. I'm saying by the total maskan of it is no. I don't think it's. Tell me a scenario. I'm telling you, give me a scenario. The Jew comes to you, he's in Manhattan, and he goes to Daf Yomi shir every lunch. What are you going to tell him? I don't think it's a good idea.
I'm talking about a Lubavitcher.
You're a Lubavitcher, and you're learning Daf Yomi. Should I tell you not to learn?
A guy who wants to start learning the thing.
So what are you going to tell him? Not to learn? If he wants to learn, what are you going to tell him? Tell me the words you would tell him.
I don't know, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I don't see where did you see somewhere that the Rebbe ever gave Hayirah. You should tell people not to learn Daf Yomi.
Start from the beginning or do Daf Yomi?
So what would you tell him? Tell him maybe take him a step for the year. What would
I say, Gesundheit, hey, God bless you, and the more you learn, the better. That's what I would tell him. What's the shot?
He likes the idea already.
He likes to do it. He wants to do it. So you're going to tell him not to learn? What do you? So it's your job to tell a guy not to learn. It doesn't make any sense.
If he's asking you about what I want to start learning tomorrow, what would you then offer him? Take him a step for a year, or
first of all, every circumstance he's going to learn Chavrusa. Daf Yomi is convenient because there's groups everywhere.
You won't offer him Daf Yomi because it's not like about.
These are the questions that people have or people in Lubavitch. So since nobody in Lubavitch learns Daf Yomi, or very, 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 very few.
It's not true. There's quite a few that do.
And the big Chassidim in Lubavitch.
How do we measure big?
The mashpiyim, the Asher Nikoleiver, they don't learn Daf Yomi. The people
Don't even start with that.
He's talking about 6 feet under. Category big.
That Mendel, they don't learn Daf
Farbrengen schlagen am Ches.
No, Zog, what's repeat what? Don't just give me a date. What's Shlachman Ched? Did the Rebbe say Prokim?
What?
What did the Rebbe say? Go ahead, tell me Shlachman.
The Rebbe said there's a shmat from Elokus.
What did he say?
Where I remember,
I'll tell you the word in a second.
I'm saying it wasn't Bahasman, it's B'Didenu. It's Alashim. And B'Neisel that wasn't not Shalom B'Chol Nefesh, it also wasn't the Pit Gab wasn't to throw it.
So how does it stem with the letters to the Rebbe that
the Rebbe said it to be mashmit, the Rebbe told people to be mashmit. It wasn't should be a public news or whatever, but how
does it stem with the letters of the Rebbe to
Montreal?
Yeah.
Because maybe they were already doing it.
Yeah, you're not telling people to stop. I'm not saying. No, I'm saying, but if a guy's gonna come and ask you, should I start from Blachs from the beginning?
How does it stem with the Rebbe's letters to groups?
Because the Rebbe's bad Torah mitzvahs. Any
letters to people learning Daf Yomi.
No, it's usually to go
to learn.
This is like a bracha. This is like a thing. It's not a thing. If this is the way you're gonna get to it, it is the only way.
I know at least 2 or 3. What do you do? How does it stem? Muslil. It's Muslil, and there's a letter. And this is Hanoche from Azakon and from Echad. They're not all remembered. Huh? I know. So this Noche, we don't agree that was the Rebbe said. He's not necessarily the trustworthy maniach, I would say. That's number one. Look at the other Noche, it doesn't say it quite that way. Anyway, I just asked you. It cannot be a stira to the letters of the Rebbe.
Yeah, but it's not. It's the Rebbe.
The Rebbe's writing to people that's supposed to be Muslim.
That letter, I think, is people benching the Rebbe for ofness. And it happens to be that they were a chabura of people that got together to learn Daf Yomi. And they were answered.
Anyway, do me a favor. I have not a suffix in my mind that if the Rebbe, you ask the Rebbe, there's people in Daf Yomi should be say Muslim b'tachlis.
No, obviously not.
They're already learning.
We're not talking about.
We're talking about to start learning.
We're talking about guys gonna come over to you and ask you, should I start learning brachas or should I learn Daf Yomi? What are you answering?
I've never heard anyone ask such a question. That's a hypothetical question. No,
that's exactly the question.
That's not. It'll never be the question. No one ever asks such a question. They say I have a Daf Yomi in my office, and they ask you, should I go there? What would you say? Muslim b'tachlis. That's what you would say. Why not? That's the most realistic question you're going to get. There's Daf Yomis everywhere. I want to start learning. I know wherever I go I can learn it. There's groups, there's Magid Shiyurim, there's online. And they're asking you because they think you're a trusted mashpia. Tell me what you think you should answer. You can decline, you could say, I don't know what to say. You could say, absolutely not. It's Aveda Zara Mamish. Or you could say, because when today learn. I would think the Rebbe would say the last one. You yourself, if you feel you don't want to learn, I'm not going to tell you go learn. You have to go learn. I don't understand where this kanois mishagas comes from.
No, I'm saying in other words.
Is this a? What's that? Do you think this is a mifza?
No, it's not mifza. It's not mifza. But
so what was it? And I told you.
Do you think there's an?
Did you look at the other hanachas?
Yeah.
What does they say?
Three little things. One is that the fika didn't tell Tommy the film, but even though he wasn't shel b'feiris, but he never didn't want the bachman to learn it. Another one is that he wasn't mejutza from it. Another one is that still with the
Another one that what? What's the second one?
It was not merutza.
What was the third?
But merutza means what?
Merutza, tachlis ashliluza, learn sholos of b'feiris.
Okay. Which was mine hanacha?
Which was yours?
You're the one moving to the
I think he didn't hear right. The Rebbe said he was not sheiled, and he heard that it was Muslim B'tachlis. That's what I think was the mistake.
That's what you wanted.
Not what I wanted. I happen to be a Becheskes Namonis.
What do you go and give a speech to people to Daf Yomi share?
Could you do?
I'd give a speech to the people to learn Torah.
That's exactly.
In every possible way.
Right.
What does that have to do with our discussion here? You're talking about what's Did I tell you to make it a mitzvah that you have to go teach people to do Daf Yomi? We're not talking about that. That's not the discussion altogether. There are.
Your one is Leish
What about you discuss yourself? Can you use that as a
taking cuts is after Leihedel Tamid Yatzmini.
That's the most.
After Leish Shalos of Befeiris, we come up and Leihedel came Tamid Yatzmini.
That is the most likely correct. I trust that one most. I didn't write it actually. It was written by reliable manichim. Let me just tell you very bluntly. Michael Zolson did not write Sitna that it was Magia. No, this was probably written maybe by my brother Chaim Abraham's other people. But this was looked over by the most Achayzik. You don't like to hear it because we're pushing it, but that's the fact. You weren't even born then, right? So you're telling me what's an achraya on this? What you're deciding? But someone tomorrow is going to write Hanoch and says new things. You can say, oh, it's reliable because someone wrote it. Not everything written is accepted. There are things with achrayas. So first of all, let's get it clear. I don't even trust that Hanoch. So I would say that Hanoch is not even accurate. So we don't even have something to argue about. The Rebbe never said it. If he never said Mushal B'tachlis, then there's nothing to talk about. So you have a suffix. Maybe he said it, maybe he didn't say it. I'm pretty convinced that it's the Techen Kotze is the most correct.
And even if it's a Techen Kotze?
Doesn't matter. I'm convinced it's the most accurate Hanocha.
I'm saying even if it's the most accurate Hanocha, it's still a Shlila.
You don't even have the word Shlila. The Rebbe said, even though he didn't hate it,
no, even though he wasn't Shel B'Feiris, but he didn't tell the Bacham to learn it.
What's the maskana from that?
What?
What's the maskana from that?
That the Bacham were not meant to be learning it.
The Rebbe said that. Bacham should learn. He didn't tell them so. That's it. That's all you know from that. That's all you know. That's all you know from it. That he didn't give Eiron, right? It's not chitas. Chitas, he gave Eiron and Daf Yomi not. Why do you have to make it more than it is? And I understand even making this ha'ikr. The Rebbe said, bring Mashiach.
Even say it's
you kochen sich in Mashiach as much as you kochen sich in the shlil of Daf Yomi. No, what? So what? It's ungechepet of a thing. And you don't take seriously the Rebbe said to be mashmited. Maybe that's also hero from the Rebbe. So maybe it means because people will not understand what he meant. And how could you even bring out any heroes from something that is so open to so many interpretations? That you taken from this, the Rebbe would tell someone not to learn it? Absolutely not. How could you, from those words?
Can you take your Yitzchizim and do it, the one that you're doing by Daf Yomi, use that for the Yitzchizim?
What? Can you?
Your Yitzchizim Masechta, can you use, like, let's say you're doing brachas, can you take that as your Daf Yomi Masechta? Your Yitzchizim Masechta?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
No, basically you have a Yitzchizim Masechta and you do Daf Yomi, right? Can you take one of those Masechtas and use it for Yitzchizim?
I'm not sure why you're mixing the two.
Yeah, he played.
Why are we?
Since when is Daf Yomi a mitzvah? I mean, what do you say?
No, you have to take one Masechta to be Yitzchizim, but you want to also do Chudas Hashas.
But Daf Yomi is learning every day a Daf for 7 years.
Yeah, but you want to go to Chudas Hashas. Can you do that? Can you use it?
Why can't you? There's no chiyuv of Daf Yomi.
Because I saw a letter, I think Tazayin, the Rebbe writes to this guy, it says, you want to take your Masechta that you use for Yitzchizim and take your Daf Yomi Masechta and use that. But the Rebbe says because what's the if you're doing one Masechta, you finish your whole Shas. Why are you doing? What's the point of doing one Masechta and taking that kilo, you're doing a whole Shas? And like Daf Yomi is like you're trying to finish the whole Shas. Like Mimon, you're doing the whole Shas. That
you lost me over my head. What should I do?
No,
I'm not sure what you want.
Where is this letter printed?
I think it's not design. It's not like it's Kiddush. You're asking if you do this Kiddush Masechta.
With Daf Yomi, did ever write?
Yeah, that writes my money. Either doing it.
You want to show it to me inside? I'll look at it. But without that, I don't know what you're talking about. I know hundreds of Lubavitchers that learn Daf Yomi, by the way. You learned some today?
What's the mic?
Citizenship.
The parents wrote into the Rebbe.
A takon of a Rebbe is a takon of a Rebbe. It's a whole different world.
They could have said it's clear.
The parents what?
Sounds like a good
I asked Beryl Moshkin about it. Is the Maisa true? He said, yeah, the Rebbe is noch mal reinschreiben. He said, ich verstehe nicht, was macht die ganze...
Kind of an umpire. What exactly?
Start from the beginning. Start from the beginning.
Ask Beryl, the story is good.
What's the story?
That the parents were wrote into the Rebbe. Whole pan and Ben Advarim he wrote in that he gives it that he's in starter for he gives a
I saw that. Yeah.
He said the Rebbe told him that it's nicht gesagt beim Schweren noch mal reinschreiben. So Beryl told me, he said the Maisa happened. He said versteht nicht was heißt. Gekribbelt sich auf them das and whatever.
To rewrite the letter.
When it happened, they don't look at it like it was whatever. It was what it was. I heard from other people. I heard from Avram Karpzei and different people that he used to give a share Daf Yomi anyways, and the Rebbe was always plus minus and everything. Yeah, from the Rebbe.
That's what I also heard.
And Beryl Moshkin told me that Taka happened, but whatever.
But did ever wanted him
He was laughing. He said 40 years later, everyone's coming over to him, and they always ask him. It wasn't like he said.
Rebbe asked him to rewrite the pan without the details of Daf Yomi.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what you can derive from that because it could be Heirah to him, and you see the carp. It's not the Heirah.
Yeah.
I look. There's you have to.
100%.
Who's stira? What's the stira? B'chal vered v'gin.
No, it's before Rambam. This is before Rambam came out. This is way years before.
A woman.
There was other people that came also. They had to share that other people.
I think people should ask learn Daf Yomi. Number one, there's obviously Sinol. Number two, you have to be able to teach them the Snaga.
It's good for.
Jacobson, you know that it's
good for fundraising.
So he ripped out all of that.
What happened? There's no resemblance of who he really was.
Don't bring rice from him. Leber Shuft and ask him. I don't see him as any. He also is the one that says if I bring in Samach Vov, Samach Mem, Zolber Kreitzer Chochem.
I know what he says.
Listen, Amaratzim are not the people to ask about Torah.
Can we quote you on that?
Huh?
Can we quote you?
That Amaratzim not spoken about Torah. Quote whatever you want. I'm just telling you.
Recording him.
It's being recorded. I don't have nothing to say. I'm modest to talk about Torah. It's like ridiculous. It's like going to a insane asylum and the insane guy telling you about medicine. I mean, you have to tell me the chum. Just also, there's a whole attitude. And I thought also the Babbitt should be probably focusing on learning more, not learning. You know.
So you thought?
Look, I told you, if a guy's asik v'limud Torah yem v'layla, and he wants to talk about this today, but someone who's busy with Dvarim B'Teilim all day, I don't think should really be talking about learning and not learning Daf Yomi. Let's be very honest. It doesn't have any credibility because you're not into learning. You're just into not. You know, I'm not saying. I'm just saying. So that's why it's be a little balanced, huh?
I thought you don't know how you knew.
I don't know, but I don't know. I mean, it's a wild guess. It's a wild guess. Look, what did Rebbe yell, Beis Kislev? And then the fleeing. You know, that's our problem more than anything. You know.
The story of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the guy that had a problem with someone getting stuck at night.
Yeah, I said that.
Oh, you just said that?
Yeah. Look, I'm jealous of them that they could pull together 100,000 people. We haven't done that.
Isn't there a thing that they want to make a Simon Ramam in the stadium and the Rebbe told them not to?
Because they'll be empty.
Once in 7 years.
No, we couldn't do it in 1 7 years either. We don't have such a father.
Because he'll be
They should ask your father, no?
Huh?
They said they should ask your father.
That was about first Sima Rambam, yeah.
What?
To do it in Madison Square, yeah.
Not even so big.
Never said nothing.
Where there was
nothing?
Never said nothing.
Ask my father.
To ask your father to ask someone that understands. You know?
Then he wrote Kamoi, yeah, like my father as an example. The Rebbe said to do it on Big Farnem. So they asked the Rebbe, what means a Big Farnem? So the Rebbe said to ask a mumche in Persemis and so on. Kamoi.
Your father suggested Madison Square Garden.
He said that's what you should shoot for, a big place, big. But it wasn't just because of Madison Square. It was that they were not really caring for it. They're not ready to do that. It's a serious, this serious.
Until now, everyone was always saying the reason why they was against Madison Square Garden is because of the stadium, because of this or that.
I don't know if that was.
I don't know if it was, fill it up. So.
Right, exactly. I don't know if they were on that farnem. You have to be ready. You can't just. It's not a Chassidus Shemlav Malki going to fill up. Even the Daf Yomi was not that much as big as it, but they turned it into a big machine. The Shatnez team. Huh?
Amy Massim Kapashit.
What are we reading?
About Madison Square Garden.
Okay. So it could be, first of all, it was my father's suggestion. The Rebbe didn't say whatever my father says, Heilig. He was going to my father to think on a big farnem. That was his suggestion. I think that was his suggestion. Fine.
Where's Madison Square Garden?
Manhattan.
Hey, I want to go for Mumchas happen again?
No, it happened.
But let's say, 1 second, you could do it in the Hilton Hotel. I mean, there's other places that are big. The Javits Center,
That was the first team on with your father. That was
the first one in Manhattan.
It happened again later, no? Did it? I think I remember that.
The thing is, like, look, would let's say if Lubavitcher Rosh Hashiva was invited to speak by the MetLife, should he go or not? I would say yes, be a Kiddush Hashem, but they don't want a Lubavitcher speaker.
They got one.
Who?
The night before. The night before they had a VIP thing. Your brother spoke.
A VIP what?
Like a
the Purim and the top of them.
You sure? My brother told me he didn't speak. They didn't want him to speak.
The hour speech.
Is it online?
Yeah, I would download it if you want.
Okay, so then okay, but that was like, what was that, for a group of people?
For a small crowd of VIPs.
Hour and 17 minutes.
Okay, but not on the big stadium. No.
The next time we'll have a picture of the Rebbe.
A picture that's all. Next time there'll be a big group of Lubavitchers that are learning.
What?
Next time there'll be a big group of Lubavitchers that are learning.
Why?
Of this whole Farbrengen, we're all inspired. Next time there's going to be a lot of people coming with film.
Next time, Taka. Every lobster should bring film.
Next time the Rebbe's going to go to the Siyam Daf.
Only.
Laimer Kedesh.
The Rebbe will go.
They'll come to the Rebbe for the
Exactly.
Siyam.
100%.
Wait to see him.
You got an answer to what's going to be?
We're going to ask you,
It's going to be with what?
Is there like a address to write suggestions?
No one's interviewed. No one's
For sure. I mean, you can write anyway, you can post. We'll put up maybe perhaps to yesterday's event.
The choice is don't come
Things we can do now, 70 years. I don't know.
Find this down again. Good enough.
Geulah. He was not making a bracha chayin, he was just making a bracha chayin.
Lady, you driving anywhere?
He had the name of Rabbi Mashiach, they don't buzz.
Yeah, outside.
He had the name of Rabbi Mashiach, they don't buzz. He had the name of Rabbi Mashiach, they don't buzz.
You're going down to talk to him anyway. Yeah. Somebody take care of this.
I'm not even sure she's doing that.
It can't be that way. But the worst thing worst that can happen is you'll finish shots. You know what I mean?
Pass to someone who's doing it. The other time comes to stop. From the start.
The worst thing can happen, you'll finish it.
But that's not going to anyone because he needs to save there and this and the other shit. Maybe he didn't have it. Maybe I had to. But
He's very vulnerable.
Well, that's what a specific guy and the guy in the
When I put him to when you speak about it in public, when you can answer straight. I don't know.
Translate a bunch of stuff.
It's not easier with a few people, no?
What do you mean? There's a crazy
I heard this place was such a wreck.
Hours and hours and hours.
I see this electricity. That's a whole nother part.
Your Uncle Luzak was there. 3 hours.
So they don't have much on my phone?
What happened?
I came in. My office was very dark. Another 25 light bulbs. There are a bunch of light bulbs that come here. The second light bulb I put in, the whole fuse blew.
That's what happens. I was here to lose you for 3 hours fixing the electric yesterday.
Just switch a...
No. The whole wiring, it's very dangerous. The whole one up to the front of it, it's very... That's our very nice to come fix all the boxes. I brought a bunch of bowls. I can't remember which one. Clean everything.
So you bought cleaners?
Clean it. She bought. Come on.
I can never.
What's up then?
What does it say?
What's the sugi? The day was very impressed with even for the books. I didn't watch it yet, but a few people really said the way you put hold it. Some people didn't. What's up? Say, I shot with beauty as there from Mitteleb, from this, from that, from the Marash.
I can comment on a shayla about there was a sickle from Frierdiker Rebbe over there. Which one? I think the last one. He was a little confused. He didn't have a button in it.
Sichan adjusticated Simchaf was.
No.
Sichan the maamar from. 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 The maamar from.